Dreamers, welcome to the Dreamer's Vault. Tonight's story starts normal and ends wrong. And don't worry, no mid-ads. Once we begin, there are no interruptions. Comment below. Are you listening alone or with someone? Now, turn the volume just a little lower and let's open the vault. Story 1, Mr. Lacavode. It was a quiet night, one of those soft shadowed evenings when the world feels hushed and far away. The city outside my window had faded into a hush of distant headlights and the occasional shiver of wind against glass. I'd made my tea, checked the locks, and curled into bed with the warm, familiar glow of my bedside lamp. I remember thinking how peaceful it all seemed, how safe. But even then, before the first sound, I felt it. A strange unease, like someone else's breath on the back of my neck. The sense that I wasn't alone, though I had always lived alone. I tried to shake off the feeling with routine. Phone in hand, I scrolled aimlessly through stories, letting the words blur together until my eyes grew heavy. There's a comfort in repetition, in the small rituals we build at the edges of our days. But that night, as I let the glow of my screen paint strange shadows on the ceiling, something was different. Every story felt sharper, darker. Each tale carried an aftertaste of something unspoken, something that lingered, even when I tried to move on. I paused on one story in particular. I can't recall the title now, only that it made the skin on my arms prickle, the way childhood nightmares sometimes do, long after you've woken. When I finished, I let out a shaky breath and whispered, "That was terrifying," to the empty room. Then I scrolled on, just like always. Minutes passed, maybe 20. The house had settled into a hush. My tea had cooled beside me. That's when I heard it, a sound, so soft I thought I'd imagined it. A gentle, deliberate scratching. Somewhere near my bedroom door, I went still. The sound faded. Silence, thick and heavy, pressed in on all sides. My heart beat louder. I told myself it was nothing, an old house creaking or wind against the eaves. The things you tell yourself when you're alone, and darkness pools in the corners. I turned on my lamp and waited, staring at the closed door, half expecting to see it move. But nothing happened. I let out a slow breath, shivering a little, and tried to laugh it off. "You're just on edge," I told myself. Just stories, just shadows. I set my phone aside, but the itch of unease wouldn't leave, so I did what anyone would do. I went back to scrolling, hoping to distract myself, to let the familiar world of other people's words lull me into sleep. But the scratching came again, longer, more insistent. This time I couldn't ignore it. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor. Every step was careful, slow, as if moving too quickly might wake something that should remain asleep. I reached the door and pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing but silence greeted me. My hand trembled as I wrapped it around the cold metal of the doorknob. I opened the door just a crack enough to peer into the dark hallway beyond. Only shadows, only emptiness. I closed the door quietly, trying not to disturb whatever fragile peace lingered. But as I turned, a sudden violent sound split the quiet. My closet door flung open so hard it rattled the walls. I froze. For a moment I was a child again, small, helpless, hiding under the blankets from things that only come at night. My eyes squeezed shut, as if that could keep the darkness at bay. But the silence pressed in, heavy and total, and then the world changed. The ticking of the clock beside my bed stuttered, then stopped altogether. Time itself seemed to unravel. I forced myself to open my eyes, and that's when I saw him. He stood impossibly tall, 8 feet, maybe more. His frame a strange geometry of limbs that seemed to stretch and bend beyond what was human. His arms hung at his sides, long as branches, and his legs were sharp, spindly, almost insect-like. His body was cloaked in blackness, a shroud that swallowed the light, with edges that flickered like smoke. But it was his face, or what I thought was a face, that undid me. Twin ruby eyes, glowing from beneath the hood. No mouth, no features, only those eyes, watching, waiting. I tried to speak, but my throat was dust. "Who are you?" The words barely left my lips, but I felt him hear them, somehow felt them echo in the cold space between us. And then, without moving, he answered. His voice wasn't a sound, but a sensation, a cold ripple through my mind, like a draft in a sealed room. "I am Mr. Lacavote. I am here to right your wrong." My blood ran cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 100 questions tangled in my chest, but before I could ask even one, he was beside me, close enough that I could taste the air, sour and rotten, thick with the scent of earth and something far older. He reached out, slow and deliberate, with hands that were nothing but bone, each finger impossibly long. He touched my cheek, and the world tilted. Pain exploded behind my eyes, raw, searing, like the burn of ice and fire at once. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My voice was gone, swallowed by the dark. All I could do was stand there, drowning in terror, as the pain went on and on. He leaned in, his presence filling my mind, his words now coiling through my thoughts. "I am the keeper of votes. You know what you did. You will right your wrong, or I will take your eyes and your eternal soul. You have 24 hours. And then he was gone. The world lurched back into place. The clock began to tick again. The shadows retreated to the corners. I stood there gasping, cold sweat slick on my skin, the memory of pain still burning behind my eyes. I told myself it was a nightmare, some trick of a sleepless mind, but my hands were still shaking. The air still stank of rot, and something else I couldn't name. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed, knees drawn to my chest, flinching at every sound. I saw him behind my eyelids, those eyes, those hands, that silent ancient malice. Morning was a gray, uncertain thing. The world felt thinner. Every shadow seemed to crawl. Every sound was suspect. I spent the day pacing, searching for something, anything to explain what had happened. What wrong had I committed? What had I failed to do? Had I forgotten a promise, missed an appointment, let someone down? My mind spun with guilt for things I couldn't name. Desperate to feel normal, I opened my phone. As I scrolled through the stories, I paused on the one I'd read the night before. The one that had started all of this. A memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. I'd read the story and moved on, without a thought. I'd never given it the upvote it deserved. A cold, crawling dread moved through me. Was that it? Was this the wrong I had to right? Hands shaking, I clicked the up arrow. A silent plea whispered into the void. And then, I waited. The day dragged by. I couldn't eat, couldn't rest. Every second was an eternity. I thought of writing to my family, of saying goodbye, but the words wouldn't come. Who would believe any of this? By dusk, the fear had curdled into exhaustion. I returned to my room and waited for the sun to vanish. As darkness fell, the house became a mausoleum of silence. I sat on my bed, breath shallow, heart pounding, counting down the final minutes. When the hour arrived, I closed my eyes and listened to nothing, and then a breath behind me. A slow, cold exhale that smelled of earth and death. I opened my eyes, and there he was, Mr. Lacavote, impossibly close, those eyes now the deep blue of sapphires, shining in the dark. He looked at me, through me, as if measuring the weight of my soul. "Don't let it happen again," he whispered, a voice made of smoke and stone. Then he was gone. I still see him sometimes, in dreams or on the edge of sleep. I hear the slow ticking of the clock, the scratch at my door, the cold in my bones. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe that's what the doctors will say, if I ever tell them. But the memory remains, sharp as glass, impossible to forget. So now, every night, as I lie in the quiet and the shadows gather, I remember, not all stories are just stories, and some debts are never truly paid. If you find yourself scrolling late at night, lost in someone else's darkness, remember to leave a little kindness behind you. You never know who's watching or what waits in the space between stories. Next, listen to what someone else experienced. Story 2. Nothing but static. It's been 10 years since I left that small Wisconsin town behind, but there are nights, even now, when it all comes back. Nights when the static hum of an old radio seems to bleed through the walls, filling the shadows with memories I try to forget. Most people, when they talk about their first year teaching, remember lesson plans and laughter, the rush of something new. Me, I remember 2 stories, 2 students who changed the way I think about the world, about what's real and what isn't, and about the things that linger just out of sight. It started, as these things often do, with something innocent, a classroom, bright with the low gold light of late autumn, dust motes spinning lazily above battered desks, the hum of the radiator, and the distant shouts from the gym. I'd been assigned to teach sophomore creative writing, and in a fit of seasonal spirit, gave them a challenge: write a story that scares me. I didn't expect much. These were kids, restless, clever, more interested in their phones and friends than in any ghost stories I could tell. But the world has a way of surprising you. Sometimes it's the quiet ones who hide the loudest secrets. What followed were 2 stories that still haunt me, and as I lie awake in the darkness, the only sound the gentle hiss of static from my bedside radio, I wonder if any of us ever truly know where fiction ends and reality begins. Scene 1. Arrival. The school was old, the kind of building that had grown roots deep into the town's history. Red brick, high windows, a bell that rang every hour with a mournful echo. My classroom was on the 2nd floor, facing the empty football field, a patch of ragged green that turned to gold in the afternoons. I was young, eager, determined to make a difference, but in those first weeks I mostly felt invisible, just another adult lost in the shuffle of lockers and bells. The students saw right through me, their eyes drifting to the clock, the window, anywhere but the front of the room. Still, I pressed on. I tried to teach them about stories, about how words could shape the world, about how every legend has a grain of truth buried somewhere deep. Around Halloween, I assigned them a flash fiction exercise, Scare Me, a simple challenge. Tell me a story that makes the hair on my arms stand up. Most of the submissions were what you'd expect: haunted houses, creaking stairs, monsters under the bed, but 2 stood out. One belonged to Jake, a boy so quiet I sometimes forgot he was there until he handed in his work. The other belonged to Kate, a girl with sharp eyes and a quicker tongue, who seemed to be always watching, always waiting. I remember the first time I read Jake's story. It felt different, too real somehow, as if the words had been soaked in memory, not invention. Scene 2. Jake's story. He wrote about a boy and his grandmother, about a room in a nursing home, the fields outside blurring into endless white as winter crept in. The boy would visit, bringing chocolates, awkward and quiet, never knowing what to say. The grandmother sat by the window, listening to a radio always tuned to the same frequency, 89.1, only static. She listened for hours, day after day, as if waiting for something. One visit she grabbed his wrist, her hand cold and dry, and whispered, "She, listen." He lifted her headphones, pressed his ear to the plastic cup. Only static, the soft hiss of emptiness. "Listen closer," she insisted. He tried, straining to hear more. The longer he listened, the more the sound seemed to change. An organ's faint chords, distant screaming, the dragging of chains. The grandmother whispered, "Soon they will come. They will come to take me away." The boy left, unnerved, told his parents, who shrugged it off as old age, but the words stuck with him. He couldn't let go of the feeling that something was waiting for his grandmother in that static. Later, he confided in a friend, a girl across the street, who knew about the legend. The ritual, she called it, late at night, With a radio and a closet door left slightly open, you could tune to 89.1 comma, put on headphones, close your eyes, and wait. If you were patient, the static would change. You might hear the organ, the screams, the chains, and if you kept your eyes closed, a figure would appear, dragging you into the closet. Your fate after that was unknown. The boy tried it. In his bedroom, after midnight, the closet door cracked open behind him, the radio hissing in his ears. At first, nothing happened. Then the room seemed to shrink, shadows creeping along the walls, the air growing heavy. Beneath the static, faint notes of music, a voice whispering his name, the scrape of metal. Then loud and sudden, "Open your eyes." He jumped, heart pounding, yanked off the headphones, only to hear laughter from his walkie-talkie. His friend had scared him, nothing more. The closet was wide open, only static. But the fear stayed with him, and 2 weeks later, his grandmother died in her sleep. Jake's story ended there. No twist, no neat resolution, just a sense of unfinished business, a feeling that some stories don't end, they just wait for the next person to listen. Scene 3. Kate's story. Kate's story was different, shorter, sharper, told in breathless fragments. It wasn't about a boy or a grandmother. It was about panic, guilt, and secrets, about a ritual performed not for fun, but out of a desperate need to know. She wrote about a room that felt newly empty, headphones on the floor, static still hissing, about hearing noises from the closet, labored breathing, nails scraping from the inside. She gripped the handle, felt something cold push back, a presence she couldn't see or name. A voice whispered, "Help me." She couldn't open the door. Wouldn't. She backed away, closed it tight, and left the room, telling herself there was nothing inside but static. The last line stuck with me. "Won't tell, will never tell. My story doesn't exist, it's simply not there. It's nothing but static." Scene 4. The haunting begins. After I read both stories, I couldn't sleep. I found myself lying awake, the details looping through my mind like a half-remembered song. The fields outside my apartment seemed endless, snow flattening the world to a hush. Sometimes in the silence, I thought I could hear the faint buzz of static through the walls. At school, I watched Jake and Kate. They never spoke, never even glanced at each other. It was strange my colleagues told me they'd once been inseparable. Something had changed between them, some invisible line drawn after Halloween. I kept the stories in my desk, rereading them between classes, searching for a key I couldn't name. I started to wonder if I'd become part of their prank, the punchline to a joke I didn't understand. One afternoon, I kept Kate after class. I tried to sound casual, asking about her story, her inspiration. She shrugged, flashing a crooked smile. "Just experimenting, I guess. Did you like it?" she asked. Before I could answer, she leaned in and whispered, "Have you ever heard of 89.1? My heart skipped. I tried to speak, but my words stuck in my throat. Kate burst out laughing. "It was all a joke, Mr. Patrick. We made it all up. We so got you." I forced a smile. It was just a game, after all. But something in her laughter felt forced, a little too sharp, a little too hollow. Scene 5. The ritual. Obsession and doubt. I couldn't let it go. The stories clung to me, winding their way into my thoughts, my dreams. I started asking questions about Jake, about Kate, about the legend of 89.1. My colleagues shrugged it off. "Urban legends," they said. "Kids make things up." But I wanted to know, was there any truth hidden under the layers of fiction? Or had I just fallen for a well-crafted trick? One night, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, an old radio in my lap. I tuned it to 89.1. Static? The closet door stood slightly ajar behind me, the room washed in moonlight. I put on headphones, closed my eyes, and waited. At first, there was nothing, just the soft hiss, the distant groan of the radiator. My breathing grew slower, deeper. The longer I listened, the more the static seemed to shift. It grew heavier, deeper, as if something was moving beneath it. For a moment, I thought I heard music, a faint, mournful organ, notes drifting just beyond hearing. Then a scream, low and stretched, blending with the wind outside, chains dragging across something hard. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, the tricks of a tired mind. But the feeling grew, a presence in the room, standing just behind me. The urge to turn around was overwhelming, but I kept my eyes closed, hands gripping the edge of the mattress. Then, clear and sharp, a voice hissed, "Open your eyes." I tore off the headphones, heart racing. The static vanished, replaced by the silence of the house. The closet door was still just a crack open, darkness pressing against the thin slice of light. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I'd let a pair of clever students get inside my head, but the fear stayed with me. Scene 6. Unraveling the truth. The next day, I shared my experience with a colleague, an old hand who'd seen his share of teenage drama. He laughed, but his eyes narrowed as I described the details. "You know about Abby, right?" he asked, voice low. I shook my head. He told me about a girl who'd gone missing the previous year. Disappeared from her bedroom in the middle of the night. No note, no clues, nothing. Her name was Abby. She'd lived across the street from Jake. A chill ran through me. The details matched. The friend in Jake's story, the voice in the closet in Kate's. Was it all coincidence, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? I tried to brush it off. Coincidence, that was all. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more the details pressed in. I began to search. I called retirement homes, searching for a Grandma Rosie, but found nothing. I scoured the internet for references to 89.1, found nothing but dead ends. The legend didn't exist outside of those stories. I reread Kate's story again and again. The voice behind the closet door, the plea for help, it's nothing but static. Scene 7. The final confrontation. I scheduled a conference with Jake. I told him how much I'd enjoyed his story, how impressed I was with his writing, how much it had stuck with me. I mentioned the prank, how he and Kate had really gotten me. He smiled, a small, sad thing. It was Kate's idea, he said. We just wanted to scare you. I pressed further, but he shook his head. It's all made up. None of it's real. He looked away, and for a moment I thought I saw tears in his eyes. I let it drop. What else could I do? I was a teacher, not a detective. I had nothing but stories, stories that no one else wanted to hear. Scene 8. The town turns. But rumors have a way of growing in small towns. My questions, my obsession, started to spread. Soon, the staff was whispering about me in the break room. Parents complained. The administration grew cold. When the police finally spoke with Jake and Kate, it went nowhere. It was just a story, they said, over and over. We're sorry if we scared anyone. I was called into the office. The principal was polite but firm. We need you to move on, she said. The kids have had enough. So have we. By spring, I'd packed my things. I left the town behind. A cardboard box of supplies in the back seat. The photocopies of those stories tucked in with the rest. I didn't look back. Scene 9. Aftermath. The lingering static. Years have passed. I've moved on, or tried to. I teach elsewhere now, in a bigger city, where the students are just faces in a crowd. But sometimes, late at night, I find myself listening for that old familiar hiss of static. I keep the stories in a drawer by my bed. I tell myself they're just words, nothing more. But sometimes, when the wind howls and the radio sputters into life on its own, I wonder about Jake and Kate, where they are now, if they ever think about that autumn, if they remember the stories we shared. I wonder about Abby, the girl who vanished, the voice in the closet. I wonder if there was any truth buried in all that fiction. Sometimes, in the dark, I try the ritual again, just to see. I tune the radio to 89.1, leave the closet door cracked open, put on headphones, close my eyes. I listen, heart pounding, for the faintest sound beneath the static. A note of music, a distant scream, chains dragging across stone. I never hear anything. Not really, but the fear, the dread, is always there. A whisper in the dark, a memory that refuses to fade. I suppose that's the power of stories. The good ones, the dangerous ones. They never really leave you. They echo in the static, waiting for someone to listen. And sometimes in the hush before sleep, I think I hear a voice, soft and desperate, begging from the shadows behind the closet door. Help me. But when I open my eyes, there's nothing there, only static, ending. I don't have answers. Maybe I never will. Maybe those stories were just that, stories. Maybe they were something more. It doesn't matter now. The years have passed, and the world has moved on. But as I lie in the darkness, the radio humming softly by my bed, I can't help but listen. Just in case, just for a moment. Because sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't what you see or hear, it's what waits in the spaces in between. The silence behind the static, the shadow behind the door, and on some nights, if I listen closely enough, I can almost hear them. Faint, far away, just beyond the edge of sleep, nothing but static. Here's something that happened not so long ago. Story 3, the Arkansas Sleep Experiments. Sleep, we take it for granted, don't we? As if every night, the world closes its eyes and drifts somewhere safe, somewhere silent, far away from the hard edges of waking life. But what if you could live without it? What if the quiet shelter of dreams was just a habit, something you could turn off? What if sleep was the last wall between you and something else? It's been years since I left Arkansas behind, but some nights when I can't drift off, I remember the things we saw and the things we lost. I've never told anyone the truth, not really. Sometimes I lie awake, feeling the darkness pressing in, the faint echo of voices from somewhere I hope is just a memory. If you're listening to this, let me tell you, sleep is not an inconvenience. It is not a waste. Sleep is the only thing that stands between us and a kind of cold that goes deeper than any winter. If you doubt me, let me tell you what happened. I am the only one who left that place. 1. The arrival. The compound in the woods. We called it the Octagon. At first it was almost a joke, how much the building looked like something from a nightmare. Thick concrete walls, heavy steel doors, built deep in the woods on roads that wound and wound until you couldn't see the sky anymore. There were no windows, no cell signal, no sound except the hush of wind through the trees and the soft crunch of gravel as Professor Richardson's van came to a stop. He'd chosen us, 4 of his best. We'd worked in his lab, assisted on his papers, argued with him through long evenings about the mysteries of the mind. He'd always seemed strange, but brilliant. He had that look in his eyes, like he'd seen something no one else could, something beautiful and terrifying at once. We trusted him. Maybe we shouldn't have. He called it the experiment that would change the world. No more sleep, he said. Think about it. 6 to 8 extra hours every day. What would you do with that time? We'll be the first, the pioneers. He never explained how it would work. He wanted to keep the details secret, said the idea was too valuable. All he told us was that his machine would change something fundamental inside us, using sound, patterns, frequencies so precise they would gently nudge the mind out of sleep's ancient grip. Dreams are evolutionary debris, he told us, useless. If we can let them go, we'll find something new, something higher. I remember the way we all smiled at that, tired, nervous, excited. We believed in him, or at least we wanted to. 2. Inside the Octagon, the inside was worse than the outside. The halls felt too long, the angles too sharp. Every corner seemed a little off, as if you couldn't quite map the space in your mind. It felt like a maze designed by someone who wanted you to get lost. The compound was stocked, Books, food, games, everything we could need for a month, except one thing, a way out. Once we walked through those doors, Richardson sealed them behind us. For science, he said, and for your own safety. The machine only works if you're isolated. He installed us in our rooms, explained the rules. You will not dream. Any effects you notice, write them down. We're in uncharted territory. His words echoed as he left, his footsteps vanishing down the hall. After that, it was just the four of us, and the humming of the machine. Week 1. Euphoria. The first few days felt almost miraculous. I slept for 3 hours, then 2, then less. But instead of feeling tired, I felt energized, like every cell in my body had been charged. My mind was sharper, my thoughts clearer. I devoured books, played games, wandered the halls with the others, talking about everything and nothing. For a while, it felt like a paradise. JT was the first to say it out loud. He did it. He beat sleep. He grinned, running his hands through his ginger beard, eyes wide and wild. James, ever the skeptic, rolled his eyes. Or he's just pumping us full of adrenaline. I mean, how would we know? Don, quiet and serious, said nothing, just watched us all with those deep, shadowed eyes. There was something in his silence that made me uneasy, but the mood was light, almost euphoric. We felt invincible. With so much extra time, the days stretched out, long and unhurried. We joked, we debated, we let our minds wander. The machine was always there, a low hum, a pulse you could feel in your bones, but we learned to ignore it. For a while, on the 4th day, Don spoke. There's something wrong. The words fell like a stone. At first, I thought it was just the building, or maybe the lack of windows, but it feels like we don't belong here, like we're trespassing. James nodded. This place is off. The angles, the walls. Sometimes I think the building is older than it looks, or maybe it's not supposed to be here at all. JT, trying to lighten the mood, joked about haunted houses and burial grounds, but none of us laughed. By night, the feeling grew stronger. I'd lie awake in my bed, the darkness pressing close, feeling as if something was watching from just out of sight. I started waking up between naps with my heart racing, sweat cold on my skin, convinced someone had been standing over me. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just the mind, deprived of dreams, making monsters out of shadows. Week 2. Doubt and paranoia. Time began to change. The days stretched, elastic and uncertain. Without windows, there was no sunrise, no sunset, just the artificial glow of fluorescent lights and the ticking of clocks that never seemed to move at the right speed. We began to turn on each other, gently at first, small arguments, little slights, the kinds of things you'd expect from people forced together for too long. But soon it became something else. I caught myself watching the others, suspicious, searching for signs of some secret they weren't telling me. One night, as we sat in the kitchen, JT leaned forward, eyes shining with fear. Do you ever feel like someone's in the room with you? When you're almost asleep, but not quite? Like someone's just standing there, watching you breathe? We all nodded, too quickly. I thought it was just me, Don whispered. I feel it every night. James, desperate for an explanation, tried to rationalize. It's just the machine. Phase 2. Paranoia. We wrote it down in the logbook, but it didn't help. We started hearing things, voices, whispers, soft footsteps in empty halls. At first we laughed it off, but soon the laughter faded. Then the dreams, or rather the absence of them. JT asked, "Have you had any dreams since we got here?" We all shook our heads. Richardson had promised dreamlessness, but now it felt like a curse. It isn't healthy, JT said. I think not dreaming is doing something to us, like we're losing pieces of ourselves every night. None of us could disagree, but there was nothing to do but wait and endure. 5. Week 3. The corners and the voices, isolation took its toll. We stopped gathering for meals, started wandering the halls alone. The sense of unease became constant, a background hum, just like the machine itself. I noticed one corner in my room, a place where the angles didn't look right. If I stared at it too long, my eyes would blur, and I'd feel dizzy. One night, when I was caught in that strange space between waking and sleep, I saw it, a figure standing over me, featureless and tall, breathing slow and deep. I tried to move, to scream, but my body wouldn't respond. I watched as the figure turned, gliding to that strange corner, and vanished inside. When I finally snapped awake, the air was cold and sharp. I stared at the corner for a long time, afraid to blink. Something about it smelled wrong, chemical, almost sweet. I tried to shake it off. Phase 3, hallucinations, I told myself. But I wasn't alone. I overheard JT in the hall, talking to someone I didn't recognize. The voice was muffled, low, almost inhuman. "Those are the degrees of ripping," it said. I hid, pretending to be asleep, as the footsteps faded. I didn't dare ask him about it. I found James pacing the gym, sweat pouring down his face. "I heard my mother calling to me," he said, "but she's been dead a year." I tried to reassure him, but he was shaking. "She told me about the shed. Do you remember the shed?" I froze. I'd never told anyone about the shed. Not what happened. Not the crying child chained up. Not the man in black standing in the trees. But somehow he knew. Or whatever was speaking with his mother's voice knew. "She says there's a secret exit," James said, voice flat. "Inside JT. If we want to get out, we have to cut him open." The air went cold. I stared at him, searching for a joke, a sign he was just losing it. He looked at me, eyes wide and terrified. "I'm scared. We have to get out." Week 4. Collapse. James and I started searching for exits, searching for cracks in the concrete, hidden doors, any way out. But the octagon was a trap, a maze without an exit. The walls closed in. The machine's hum grew louder. Then one morning, Don was gone. We found him standing at the end of a long hallway, waving, "Bye, guys." He turned the corner, stepped into an elevator. The octagon had no elevator. It was one floor, always had been. James and I stared at each other, hearts pounding, as a group of people, blurry, shifting, rounded the corner and moved toward us. I grabbed his arm, pulled him into the kitchen, hid between the fridge and the wall. His footsteps echoed behind me, but when I looked, he was gone. The building was no longer empty. Shadows moved in every room. Sometimes I saw a little boy peering from a doorway, vanishing when I blinked. Screams echoed through the halls, desperate and choking. I followed the sound, afraid it might be James in trouble. When I reached JT's room, I stopped, heart hammering. James was inside, standing over JT's body, hands slick with blood. He was digging, searching for something in JT's open torso. "I have to get out," James said, voice flat, distant, as if someone else was speaking through him. I backed away, horrified. I ran, found a supply closet, and curled up in the darkness, shoving candle wax into my ears, trying to block out the sound of voices, the machine's hum, the screams. I waited for sleep, waited for anything that would bring the nightmare to an end. When I opened my eyes, Professor Richardson was there, shaking me gently, his face pale and worried. "You've been asleep for days," he said. He'd pulled the wax from my ears. "Where are the others?" I tried to answer, to explain, but the words tangled on my tongue. I led him to JT's room, but the body was gone. No blood, no sign of violence, as if nothing had happened at all. He drove me to the hospital, checked me in for tests. "You'll be fine," he said. "I'll pay the bills, and your loans are forgiven. Just don't talk about this. It's for the best." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe it had all been a dream, a side effect, a waking nightmare brought on by sleep deprivation and the machine. But I knew better. The fear clung to me, as real as the scar on my hand. I tried to find the others. JT, Dawn, James, but they were gone. No records, no traces, as if they'd never existed. 8. Reflection, the price of dreamlessness. Years have passed, and still, I dream of the octagon. Sometimes I see the little boy at the edge of my vision, watching. Sometimes I hear the machines hum, feel the weight of a figure standing over me as I try to sleep. Richardson was right about one thing. Sleep is not an evolutionary leftover. It is a shield, a door we close against something older, something hungry. When we dream, we are safe. When we wake, we are alone. If you are listening to this, count yourself lucky. If you dream, if you wake up with your heart pounding from a nightmare, know that you are protected. The mind is not meant to be awake all the time. There are things that wait in the corners of the world, things that slip through when the walls are thin. I don't know what happened to the others. I don't know if they escaped, or if they're still wandering the halls of that endless, windowless place, searching for a way out. All I know is this: I left a piece of myself behind in Arkansas, and I have never slept well since. Ending now, as I close my eyes at night, I listen for the hum of the machine, for the footsteps in the hallway, for the soft, shivering voice that sometimes calls my name. When you lie down to sleep, be grateful for the dreams that come, no matter how strange, no matter how frightening. Be grateful for the darkness that shields you, the silence that wraps you tight. And if you ever find yourself in a place where sleep no longer comes, where dreams have vanished, run, run, and do not look back. Because there are places in this world where the angles are wrong, where the walls don't keep things out, but let them in. And in those places, there is nothing between you and the thing that waits for you in the dark. Nothing but sleep. This next tale is as mysterious as midnight. Story 4. The Kindness of Strangers. Sometimes in the quiet hours of the night, I lie awake and wonder about fate, how a single encounter can change everything, how a deal struck in desperation can unwind the very fabric of your life, so softly you don't notice until it's too late. You should know 2 things before I begin. First, when a person is truly desperate, they will do almost anything. Second, if something seems too good to be true, it always, always is. Let me tell you a story about luck, about deals made in darkness, about the cost of second chances. A story about how I lost everything by saying yes to kindness. I tell it slowly, because I have all the time in the world now. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear my voice. Maybe you'll remember my name. Part 1. The Lowest Moment. A night at the end of the world. It was just past midnight in a city that forgot how to sleep, where neon signs buzzed over empty streets and alleyways, shivered with cold rain. I was huddled in a filthy puddle behind a crumbling bar, my skin numb, my mind awash with equal parts whiskey and shame. It hadn't always been like this. Once I'd been someone. My parents used to say I had promise. I'd graduated college with honors, a degree in English, ambition burning hot in my veins. I'd dreamed of being a writer, maybe a teacher, maybe just a man with a life worth living. But dreams have a way of slipping through your fingers, replaced by hungrier things. For me, it was chance, the spin of the wheel, the flip of the card. Gambling became my oxygen. The casinos were cathedrals. I let myself believe that if I could just win once, just one big night, I could dig my way out. Instead, I dug deeper. By 24, I owed money to people whose patience had run out. Every day was a new hustle, a scramble for cash, a prayer for mercy. I was too proud to ask for help, too scared to run, too tired to keep trying. So I did what desperate men do. I drowned myself in cheap liquor, hoping the world would go away. That's when I met him, a stranger in the dark. He appeared in the shadowed mouth of the alley, a tall figure draped in pinstripes, so crisp they might have been drawn in ink. He was impossibly thin, almost stretched, like a shadow someone forgot to pull back into their body. Yet his movements were fluid, gentle, almost musical. "Hey there, buddy," he called, his voice lilting and bright as a spring morning. "You look like you could use a hand. Luckily, I have two to spare." He reached down, his hand long and cool, and lifted me with surprising strength. I felt myself leaning against the rough brick wall, blinking away the rain and the fog of alcohol. The stranger's face swam into focus, pale skin, a wide fixed grin, black hair parted neatly, and eyes the color of old gold, all iris, glowing faintly, even in the sickly glow of the streetlight. I remember thinking, this can't be real. He looked like something from a fever dream, or a story whispered to frightened children. "There we go," he said, kneeling on spidery legs to look me in the eye. "Much better, isn't it?" His grin was disarming, oddly sincere. I almost forgot how ruined I was. Part 2. The Devil's Bargain. "Kindness with strings, what's your name?" he asked. "Nate," I muttered, barely able to find my own voice. He repeated it, tasting the sound. "Nate Wilson. Now that's a name with weight. You're a lucky man, Nate." I shook my head. "Not tonight." He laughed, a warm, echoing sound. "You know, people always say that when they're just about to get lucky. You mind if I call you friend?" I blinked, too tired to argue. "I guess so. You did save me from drowning in gutter water." He clapped his hands in delight, like a child unwrapping a present. "Splendid. Friends it is, then." He reached out and I shook his hand. It felt like an electric current ran up my arm, something almost familiar, yet impossibly cold. He stood and dusted me off, eyes gleaming. "Now, Nate, I heard you talking in the bar. Money troubles, right?" A sour wave of shame washed over me. "Not your problem, but friends help friends. That's what friends are for." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick stack of cash, and pressed it into my hand. "Will this help?" I stared at it. $20,000, maybe more. My debts, my life, my future, all wrapped in green. I can't." He cut me off with a gentle touch. "Of course you can. All I ask is that you use it well and promise me something. No more gambling, okay?" I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I promise. I swear it." He grinned, hugging me. His arms were cold, but they wrapped around me like safety. Desperate people will do anything, even shake the hand of the devil if it means one more day above ground. The paper before he left, the stranger pressed a folded sheet of paper into my pocket. "Something I jotted down for you, friend," he said. "Just a few helpful tips for the years ahead. You know, directions, opportunities, the little things that make a life better. And Nate, if you ever want to repay me, just say so. I'll think of something. No rush." He whistled as he walked away, an old cheerful tune. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, his silhouette melting into the city night. Part 3. 10 Golden Years. The instructions: I used the money to pay my debts. I got a job. I found a little peace. A week later, sober and alone, I remembered the folded paper and opened it. What I saw made no sense at first. A list of dates, names, places, instructions, so precise they could only be the result of madness or genius. October 5th, 2009. Starbucks, meet Jesse O'Brien, 351, 17 p.m. June 8th, 2011. Buy House 10 Aspen Way. Don't rent, August 17th, 2012. Conceive child with Jesse, 8 hours 31 minutes and 19 seconds p.m., and dozens more. Stocks to buy and sell, interviews to attend, people to befriend or avoid. Some of the companies listed didn't even exist yet, but would appear in headlines years later. Every prediction came true. The stranger's instructions guided me step by step through a decade of miracles. I met Jessie, fell in love, married her. I bought the perfect house at the perfect time. We had a daughter, April. Her name was written in the margin, as if my fate was just another item on the list. Every gamble I took paid off. Every crossroads, I already knew which road to walk. The good life. 10 years passed in a haze of happiness. Jesse and I built a life together, quiet, steady, full of laughter and sunlight. April was born, and my heart ached with the impossible joy of fatherhood. I never gambled again. We grew wealthy, healthy, and content. Sometimes in the quiet, I'd remember the stranger, the way his eyes glowed, the way his hand felt in mine. I'd wonder what I would have become if he hadn't found me that night. I'd whisper a thank you to the dark and try to believe my good fortune was earned, not given. But deep down, I always wondered what it would cost. Part 4, The Return Sunshine, Lollipops and Rainbows. This morning as I walked home from the store, arms full of groceries, I heard it, a familiar tune, whistled with the same careless joy I remembered from a decade ago. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Everything that's wonderful is what I feel when we're together. I turned, heart pounding, and there he was. He hadn't aged a day. Same pinstripe suit, same gleaming grin, same golden eyes that seemed to drink in the world. "Nate Wilson," he cried, spreading his arms wide. "Look at you. How's Jesse?" His voice was a time machine. I felt young and desperate again, standing in the rain. I started to reply, but he cut me off. "I'm sorry to just drop by after all these years, but I finally figured out what I want." My heart thudded, a heavy, anxious beat. "What do you mean?" He leaned in, his smile stretching wider. "You said you owed me, Nate." "Anything I wanted." "Well, I figured it out. I want your name." A deal sealed at first. I thought he was joking, but his eyes burned with a hunger I'd never seen before. My name?" "Yes. I've never had a name. I want yours. It suits me. I think it'll fit just right." I should have run. I should have argued, screamed, begged. Instead, I smiled and nodded. I owed him everything. After all, what did it matter if he called himself Nate Wilson? He hugged me, tight as a vice. "Thank you, friend. You have no idea how happy you've made me." He offered his hand. I shook it. In that moment, the world shifted. I didn't feel it at first, but the sun seemed colder, the wind sharper, the light felt thinner, like it might slip off the edge of the sky at any moment. He turned and walked away, whistling his song. I stood in the street, groceries forgotten, and felt the shape of my name begin to unravel. Part 5, The Unnaming a Stranger in My Own Home. When I arrived at 10 Aspen Way, April was playing on the lawn, her laughter ringing like wind chimes. I called her name, but she didn't look up. Inside, Jesse was in the kitchen, humming and chopping carrots. The radio blared sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. The world was perfect. "Jesse," I called, "you'll never believe who I ran into today." She didn't reply, just kept slicing, humming the same refrain. I reached out, put a hand on her shoulder, and my hand passed straight through her, like she was smoke or I was. My heart froze. From the hallway, I heard a cheerful shout. "Honey, I'm home." Jesse turned, smiling, and the stranger wearing my face, my smile, my name, walked into the room. He kissed her, squeezed her hand. "I ran into an old friend," he said, winking at me with his golden eyes. Jesse laughed, never seeing me at all. Nowhere and no one. I tried to shout, tried to scream, but my voice was gone. I watched helpless as he took my life piece by piece, my wife, my daughter, my home. He lived it better than I ever could. Jesse glowed in his presence. April laughed and called him Daddy. In desperation, I tried to touch him, to drag him away from my world, but I could not move him. He was a mountain, and I was nothing. "That's my name. This is my life," I said, tears streaming down my face. He looked at me, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. "No, friend. It's mine. You gave it to me. You never owned it, not really. You just borrowed it from me for a while. Now it's back where it belongs." I tried to protest, but my words faded into the humming of the fridge, the clatter of dishes, the sound of a knife chopping carrots. He turned, his back to me. "If it's any comfort, you can see them whenever you like." But only I can see you, just like only you could see me before. It doesn't feel good, does it? To be nobody. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, racked by silent sobs. I watched as my wife and child lived on, oblivious to the stranger among them. They never even knew I was gone. Part 6. The Endless Walk. The City of Shadows. I left the house, the world blurring around me. I wandered the city for hours, maybe days, unmoored from time. People passed by, their faces soft and shifting, none of them seeing me. The sun rose and fell, but the sky stayed gray. My name, my story, all dissolved into a haze of loneliness. I tried to speak, to write, to scream, but every sound, every mark slipped away, as if I was made of wind. In the quiet, I thought about that night, 10 years ago, in the alley behind the bar. I wondered if I had ever really existed, or if I'd always been a borrowed story, waiting to be returned. The kindness of strangers. Sometimes I see him, Nate Wilson, the man who was me, walking hand in hand with Jesse and April, whistling his favorite tune. He glances over his shoulder just once, and I see a flicker of something, pity, maybe, or regret. Sometimes when I pass a bar or a dark alley, I see someone slumped in the shadows, their face drawn and hopeless. I kneel beside them, offer a hand, a smile, a few words of kindness. I want to help them. I want to save them the way I was saved, but I can never quite reach them. My touch slides through theirs, and my voice is a whisper on the wind. All I can do is wait. Ending. If you can hear me now, you are luckier than you know. Hold tight to your name, your story, your life. Guard it well. Do not trade it away. Not for kindness, not for luck, not for anything that sings too sweetly in the darkness. Because some deals are never what they seem, and some kindnesses cost more than you can imagine. If you ever feel lost, if you ever hear a cheerful tune echoing through the night, remember me. And if you meet a stranger with golden eyes and a wide, hungry smile, do not shake his hand. No matter how desperate you are, no matter how kind he seems, turn away. For if you give him your name, you will wander the world forever. A story without a teller, a song without a singer, a life lived by someone else. Sleep well tonight, and remember, if a deal seems too good to be true, it is. Let's move on to another tale, just as eerie. Story 5. The Exporter of Cursed Goods. The town that should not exist. Listen closely, and I'll tell you about a place you must never try to find. A place hidden behind forests so ancient and tangled that even the sunlight loses its way before noon. If you see a golden fence gleaming in the distance, turn back. If you hear laughter on the wind softer than a sigh, do not answer. If you smell lemon and smoke and cinnamon all at once, you are already too close. There are places in this world that exist only to keep something inside. My town is one of them. My name is No. There are no names in this story, only roles and debts and curses that travel like a silent passenger in the back of every truck that leaves Tattletoe. Part 1. The Golden Fence. They say Tattletoe was built before the country itself was drawn on any map, built in secret by hands desperate to escape the darkness outside. The fence is gold, not because we are rich, but because it must shine brighter than the night. There is no gate, only a single, iron-banded door watched by men with empty eyes. On the outside, you might think it's a paradise. Every house is clean, every garden is tended, children laugh in the streets, and the air is sweet with flowers. But Tattletoe is a place of rules, rules so old that no one even remembers why they began. The first rule is that everyone must work. The second rule is that no one must ever use what they make. The third rule is that no one ever leaves. Not really. The people here wear their smiles like armor. But if you listen late at night, through a crack in the shutters, you can hear the whispers. Whispers about the committee, about what lives outside the fence, and about the goods we send into the world. Whispers about what happens if you break the rules. I was raised here like everyone else, learning how to sweep the streets, how to polish the fence, how to avert my eyes when the committee passed by in their black coats and silver-tipped canes. And from the time I could lift a shovel, I worked in the crematorium. Part 2. The Smell of Ash. The crematorium stands at the farthest edge of town, its chimneys taller than the church steeple, always trailing smoke that smells of burnt cinnamon and secrets. No one talks about what happens there. No one asks where the ashes go, or why the ovens burn so hot. Even in midsummer, we are told it's for the good of all. We are told the dead must be made clean, that their passing protects the living. But sometimes as I shoveled another heap of white ash, I would see something in the soot, a gold tooth, a silver ring, a toy soldier half melted. Sometimes the ash would swirl on the floor and spell a word I did not want to read. My father worked beside me until his lungs turned black. He would cough in the dark and whisper, "The fence keeps us in, not them out. Remember that." He died on a Monday, and the committee let me light the oven myself. I thought I would never escape the crematorium, that I would die there and my son, if I had one, would inherit the shovel and the ash. But then the old exporter, Mr. Deller, burned alive in his truck. The committee needed a new exporter, someone young and loyal. They picked me. Part 3. The First Export. The morning after my promotion, I walked the town in a daze, marveling at the sun on the golden fence, the perfect symmetry of every house, the carefully pruned hedges. No one met my eye. No one congratulated me. But as I passed the school, an old woman selling licorice reached out and squeezed my wrist. "Everything leaves a mark," she said, "even things you can't see." My first task was to collect the goods. I started at the gardens. There are rows upon rows of citrus trees, lemons, limes, oranges, so bright they hurt your eyes. Children are not allowed in the orchards. I walked under the branches, listening to the quiet. The gardeners worked silently, clipping fruit into buckets. But one of them, a man with a face like cracked bark, stopped me. "Don't breathe too deep," he said, "or you'll forget your own name." I laughed, nervous. He didn't. "They want a dozen buckets sent to the east, another dozen to the north. Drop them off, don't linger, don't drink, don't look back." I filled the truck. The fruit glowed in the sun, perfect as glass. Part 4. Lemonade in the Outside World. My first stop was a village nestled in the crook of a river, its houses painted pale blue and pink. They took the lemons with eager hands, offering me lemonade. I shook my head, but a girl with braids and a laugh like wind bells pressed a cup into my hand. I almost drank it. But then I saw the gardener's face in my mind, stern and cold. I set the cup down, untouched. Everyone in the village smiled too wide. Even the dogs seemed to grin. The air was thick with laughter, but it felt wrong, like a play where everyone knows the ending but me. I left quickly, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw them all standing in the street, still smiling, not moving at all. The next stop was a city by the coast. The committee wanted the limes delivered to a candy maker there. A man in a white apron met me, eyes red-rimmed, hands trembling. He took the limes, but didn't speak. I saw stains on his shirt, dark like dried blood. As I drove away, I saw him in the side mirror, eating a lime wedge, staring at the sky, a smile splitting his face. I realized then, the goods we export are not gifts. They are burdens. Part 5. The Shoemaker's Curse. Theodore Tousley's shoe shop was a place of legend. Children whispered about the boots in the window. Glass slippers, velvet loafers, boots with soles so thin you could feel the heartbeat of the earth. But no one in Tattletoe ever wore them. We all wore gray sneakers, identical, practical, lifeless. When I entered the shop, Towley's was hunched over a workbench, stitching silver thread into a pair of boots. "You're the new exporter?" he grunted, not looking up. "Yes, sir." He nodded. "They want shoes for a festival in the West." A dozen pairs of dancer's boots. I made extra just in case. He eyed my sneakers. You should try these. No one would know. I shook my head. He shrugged, the movement sharp and angry. I loaded the boxes into the truck, ignoring the pair he set aside for me. Part 6. The Dancing Plague. The festival was a riot of color, banners flying, children spinning, music spilling from every doorway. They welcomed me like a hero, laughing, clapping me on the back. I watched as they handed out the boots, blue for the men, red for the women, silver for the children. The music started. The dancing began. At first it was beautiful, 100 bodies moving as one, shoes glinting in the sun. But then, one by one, the dancers began to fall. Some trembled, some screamed, some just collapsed, eyes wide open, mouths frozen in silent song. The music kept playing, the shoes kept moving, even as their feet stilled. I ran to the truck and drove away, heart pounding, the memory of empty eyes burning in my mind. Part 7. The Cost of Loyalty. When I returned to Tattletoe, the committee was waiting for me at the gate. "We tell you the world outside is cruel," said the chairman, his voice cold as snow. "But the world inside is worse. Remember your family. Remember what we can do." They gave me a privilege, one sip of lemonade from the town with no name, just a taste. It was sweet, sharp, cold as the river. I felt something inside me loosen. Just for a moment, I was free. But then the feeling faded, and I was still myself, still the exporter, still carrying Tattletoe's curse into the world. Part 8. The Dollmaker's Whisper. After the festival, the days passed in a gray blur. I moved from workshop to workshop, each one stranger than the last. There was Mrs. Levitt, the doll maker, who lived in a house where the windows were always shuttered and the garden was filled with rusted metal birds. Inside, her parlor was lined with shelves of porcelain dolls, some smiling, some weeping, some with eyes painted so precisely they seemed to follow you as you moved. She greeted me with a curtsy and a sly smile. "You've come for the shipment, haven't you? They're all ready. Just be careful not to look them in the eye for too long." Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but there was a nervousness to her hands as she wrapped each doll in silk and placed them in wooden crates. I tried not to look, but as I carried the crates to the truck, I felt their eyes on my back, watching, waiting. One doll slipped from the crate and tumbled to the floor. Its glassy eyes caught the light, and for a heartbeat, I could have sworn I saw my own reflection, but older, gray-haired, hollow-cheeked, a sadness etched so deep it could not be undone. Mrs. Levitt picked it up, her hands shaking. "Some things remember what you do," she whispered. "Some things never forget." I delivered the dolls to a city across the border. The client was a woman with a velvet dress and a laugh like breaking glass. She opened the crates and clapped her hands in delight. "These will be perfect for my collection," she said, her eyes never quite meeting mine. As I left, I saw her place a doll in the window. The next morning, the house was empty, except for the dolls, all turned toward the door, as if waiting for someone to come home. Part 9. The Ink Maker's Secret. Next, I was sent to collect ink from Old Man Pharaoh, who lived at the end of Candle Street. His house was filled with the smell of old books, and something darker, a bitterness that made my tongue ache. Pharaoh was a quiet man, but his hands were always stained blue, black, violet, as if the colors had sunk beneath his skin. "Ink is a tricky thing," he muttered, filling glass bottles with trembling hands. "It remembers every word ever written with it, every lie, every broken promise." He handed me a crate of ink bottles, their surfaces slick and cold. "Take care, exporter, don't spill any. If you do, it'll write its own story, one you won't like." I nodded, but my hands were sweaty. As I loaded the crate, a bottle slipped, shattering on the cobblestones. Black ink snaked out, spreading in a shape that looked almost like a map, then a face, then words in a language I couldn't read. The stain faded, but I still see it when I close my eyes. A city on fire, people running, the golden fence crumbling like paper. I delivered the rest of the ink to a publisher in a far-off city. 2 weeks later, every book printed with that ink was recalled. Readers reported strange dreams, nightmares of burning forests and laughter behind locked doors. No one ever traced the source back to Tattletoe. Part 10. The Music Boxes. One of the oldest families in Tattletoe are the Belrose, who make music boxes. Their house is filled with the sound of tiny bells and the scent of lavender. Mr. Belro greeted me at the door, his face pale as parchment, his eyes rimmed with red. "Another order for the world, eh?" he said, his voice tired. "Funny how everyone wants music. No one asks what song it will play." His workshop was lined with music boxes of every size, some tiny enough to fit in your palm, others big as a suitcase. Each one played a different tune, but there was a sadness in every note, a minor key that crept beneath your skin. I watched as he wound one, a box of carved black wood inlaid with silver stars. He turned the key, and a melody drifted out, slow and sweet. For a moment I saw myself as a child, dancing in the street, my mother's arms wide, the fence gleaming behind her. Then the music grew louder, sharper. My hands began to shake. Mr. Belro snapped the lid shut. "Don't listen too long," he warned. "Some songs aren't meant for the living." I delivered the boxes to a distant city for a wedding. They played the music at the reception. By the end of the night, not a single guest remembered their own name. The bride wandered into the street, singing the tune, and was never seen again. Part 11. The Cost of Questions. By now I was beginning to understand. Every good we made was a curse. A lemon that steals your will, a shoe that dances you to death, a doll that remembers your sins, an ink that writes the future in nightmares, a song that unravels memory itself, but no one in Tattletoe ever asked why. I tried once to ask the committee. I knocked on the great iron doors at midnight, my hands shaking. They let me in, but their faces were hidden in shadow. "You wonder why we do this," the chairman said, his voice soft as dust. "You think we could just stop?" I nodded, too afraid to speak. He smiled, a terrible thin smile. "There must always be a Tattletoe," he said. "The world needs a place for its curses. If we did not make them, someone else would. If we did not send them out, the darkness would grow hungry. It would come for us." He leaned closer, breath cold on my skin. "Do your job, exporter. Don't ask again. The fence protects you only as long as you are useful." They sent me out into the night, and for the first time the golden fence looked dull, like a warning, not a promise. Part 12. The Night of the Broken Fence. One night, as autumn slipped into winter, I returned to Tattletoe after a long journey, my truck heavy with empty crates, my heart heavier still. I parked by the fence and stepped into the cold air. The sky above was black, scattered with stars. The trees whispered in the wind. As I walked toward my house, I heard a sound, metal on metal, a slow grinding creak. I froze, heart hammering. The fence was moving. A section near the crematorium had buckled, its golden bars bent outward, as if something inside had tried to escape. I hurried closer, the cold biting my skin. Smoke poured from the crematorium's chimney, thicker than usual, tinged with green and blue. As I reached the broken fence, I saw footprints, bare, burned, leading out into the forest. For a moment, I thought about following them, but the trees swayed, whispering my name, and I turned away. Behind me, the committee watched from their window, faces pale as ghosts. The next morning, the fence was repaired. No one mentioned it, but that night, I dreamed of golden bars crumbling, of darkness spilling into the world. Part 13. Family Ties. I have not spoken much of my family. Perhaps I am afraid that by naming them, I will bring the curse closer. But the truth is, they are the reason I stay. My mother, hands rough from years of work in the bakery. eyes bright even as the world dims. My little sister, who sings to the dolls and dreams of leaving Tattletoe. I come home late each night, my hands stained with ink and soot, my breath sharp with citrus and smoke. My mother hugs me tight, but her eyes flicker to the door. Did you bring anything back? She asks, voice trembling. I shake my head. No, nothing for us. She nods as if relieved. But sometimes, when I wake in the night, I hear her weeping. I wonder what curse she bears, what bargain she made to keep us safe. Sometimes I find my sister standing by the fence, her fingers curled around the golden bars, humming a song I do not know. Do you ever want to leave? I whisper. She nods, but her smile is sad. We all do, but the world outside is even darker than here. Part 14, The Taste of Freedom. Once, the committee gave me a reward for my loyalty. A sip of lemonade from the town with no name, just a taste. I drank it in the committee's chamber, surrounded by their silent faces. It was sweet, so sweet it burned. For a moment I felt weightless, my mind clear and free. I remembered sunlight on my face, the sound of water, the taste of fresh bread. But then, as the taste faded, so did the feeling. My head filled with fog, my tongue grew heavy, and I forgot what I was trying to remember. When I left the chamber, the world felt the same, but I knew I was changed. Sometimes I wonder if that sip was a blessing or a curse, perhaps both. Part 15, The Legend of the Fence. Long after midnight, when the town was silent and the wind carried only the memory of music, I sat by the fence and tried to remember what my father used to tell me. He said the fence was older than any person here, older than the roads, older even than the trees that huddle at its edges. It was built from golden secrets, shaped by hands desperate for protection. Some say it was raised to keep out a darkness that once devoured another town, one whose name no one dares speak. Others say it was built as a prison, to hold in the darkness that lives inside every Tattletoe child. There are stories, whispered from parent to child, that if you press your ear to the fence on a moonless night, you can hear the voices of those lost exporters who never returned, craftsmen who wove too much of themselves into their goods, children who stepped too close to the edge and vanished. I tried it once. The gold was cold against my skin, and the world grew very quiet. For a heartbeat, I heard music, then laughter, then a sob, then nothing at all. Part 16, The Creamery and the Baker. Not all of Tattletoe's exports are obvious curses. Some are temptations, bait on a hook, sugar on a knife. There is a creamery on Birch Lane, run by 3 sisters with hair as white as snow and hands always dusted with flour. Their butter is rich, golden, melting on the tongue. Their cheese can make a man weep with longing for home. But there is a reason no one in Tattletoe eats it. I delivered their products to a small village across the mountains, a place famous for its festivals and hospitality. They greeted me with open arms, begged me to stay, pressed warm bread into my hands. I watched as the villagers ate, at first, joy lighting their faces, laughter rolling across the square. But then, one by one, they grew silent. A hush fell over the crowd, heavy and absolute. They stared at their hands, at the sky, at the ground, as if trying to remember what came next. Some wept. Some wandered away, never to return. I left as the sun set, the taste of forbidden butter still clinging to the air. When I returned to the creamery, the sisters were waiting for me, 3 shadows against the light. Did they like it? The eldest asked, eyes bright with hope. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She smiled, but there was sadness in it, a grief too old for words. Good, then it worked. For a while at least. I did not ask what she meant. Part 17, The Committee's Bargain. As weeks turned into months, I began to feel the weight of my job pressing down on me. Every delivery brought new nightmares, faces staring from empty windows, laughter echoing down silent streets, goods too beautiful, too perfect, to be anything but dangerous. One night, I was summoned to the committee's hall. The room was cold, lit only by the glow of the fireplace and the moonlight that slipped through the high windows. The chairman sat at the head of a long table, the others arrayed in shadow. "You have done well," he said. "You have been loyal. You have kept our secrets. But we see doubt in your eyes." I said nothing. My heart thudded like a drum. He steepled his fingers. "You wonder why we curse the world, why we do not free ourselves." I nodded slowly. He sighed, old and weary. "Tattlettoe exists to keep the balance," he said. "For every happiness, a sorrow. For every blessing, a curse. If we did not export our burdens, they would fester here until there was nothing left but darkness." He leaned forward, eyes glinting in the firelight. "We carry the weight so others do not have to. We make beauty, but we pay the price." He gestured to the golden fence. "If you cross the fence, the darkness will follow. But as long as you do your duty, your family is safe. The world remains as it is." He dismissed me with a wave. Outside, the moon was full. I thought of the people in the villages, their empty smiles, their silent tears. I wondered if any of them ever knew the price of beauty. Part 18. The Cursed Mirror. One morning, I was sent to collect a mirror from the house at the end of Widow's Lane, a place so old even the stones seemed to whisper. The owner, a woman known only as Madame Vere, greeted me at the door, her face veiled, her voice a soft echo. She led me to a room filled with mirrors of every shape and size, round, oval, square, tall as a door, small as a coin. But the one she handed me was different. It was framed in black iron, cold as a grave. The glass was flawless, but when I looked into it, my reflection wavered, as if something was shifting beneath the surface. "Take care," Madame Vera said. "This mirror remembers. It shows not what you are, but what you will become. Do not gaze too long." I wrapped it in heavy cloth and carried it to the truck, feeling its weight press into my bones. I delivered the mirror to a great house on a hill, the home of a wealthy collector. He unwrapped it with trembling hands, eyes wide with greed. He placed it in his parlor, where guests would see it and marvel. That night, the house burned to the ground. Of the collector and his guests, no trace was found, only the mirror, unscathed, sitting among the ashes, reflecting the sky. The story spread, but no one traced it back to Tattlettoe. Part 19. The Musician and the Bone Flute. There was a musician in Tattlettoe, a man who played the violin so sweetly that flowers bloomed in his footsteps. He was tasked with making a special instrument for a king's coronation, a gift that would bring the king glory, or so the committee said. But the musician had a secret. He carved the flute from bone, not wood. Some say it was the bone of a saint. Others whisper it was something darker. When I delivered the flute to the capital, the king received it with delight. He played it before his court, and the music was beautiful, haunting, unforgettable. But soon the king grew restless. He could not sleep. At night, the court heard him pacing, playing the flute alone in the dark, the music growing wilder, more desperate. By winter's end, the king was mad. He locked himself in his chambers, playing the bone flute until his breath failed him. The kingdom fell into ruin. No one ever traced the madness back to Tattlettoe. Part 20. The Price of Escape. By now my dreams were filled with the faces of those I'd cursed, villagers frozen in laughter, dancers sprawled on the ground, kings with hollow eyes. I began to wonder if there was a way out. Could I escape? Could I take my family and run, leave Tattlettoe and its golden fence behind? I spoke to others who had tried. Some vanished in the forest, never seen again. Some returned, their memories scraped clean, unable to speak, eyes empty. I heard rumors of a road that led away from Tattlettoe, a road that appeared only in the fog on nights when the moon was new. One night, desperate, I tried to find it. I packed a bag, left a note for my mother and sister, and slipped through the town while everyone slept. At the edge of the forest, the golden fence shimmered in the mist. I pressed my hand to the bars, and for a moment I felt them yield. I stepped through. Part 21. The Forest of Lost Things. The forest was darker than I remembered. The trees leaned close, their branches tangled, the air thick with fog. I walked for what felt like hours, the path winding, shifting beneath my feet. Sometimes I heard footsteps behind me. Sometimes I saw shapes in the mist, faces I thought I recognized, voices calling my name. I tried to follow the road, but it twisted back on itself, leading me in circles. At dawn, I found myself back at the golden fence. Tattletoo shimmered in the morning light, unchanged. I had not escaped. No one ever does. Parts way und zwanzig. The curse that binds. I returned home, exhausted, heartbroken. My mother embraced me, her tears wet on my cheek. You tried, she whispered. We all do, sooner or later. My sister sat by the window, humming a song I did not know. The next day, the committee summoned me. They said nothing about my absence, only handed me a new list of goods to export. I took the list and left, the weight of 1,000 curses heavy on my shoulders. I understood then, Tattletoo was not a prison made by others. It was a prison we built for ourselves, brick by brick, curse by curse, secret by secret, and I was its jailer. Part 23. The Artisan of Shadows. As the seasons turned, I grew used to the rhythm of my life, gathering goods, ferrying them beyond the golden fence, returning with silence in my heart. Some nights I visited the artisan who lived at the edge of the old graveyard, Madame Vell, a sculptor who worked in obsidian and bone. She showed me her latest work, a chess set carved from black stone, each piece unique, every face marked by a different emotion: fear, joy, anger, sorrow. These are for a prince, she said, running her fingers over a bishop's sharp edge. He asked for a set that would help him always win. She placed the pieces in a box lined with midnight velvet. Her hands lingered on the king. Warn him, if he cheats, the pieces will know. They'll remember. They always remember. I delivered the chess set to a palace by the sea. Years later, I heard the prince vanished, his rooms found empty, but for the chessboard game unfinished, Black King standing alone. Part 24. The librarian and the book that consumes one export was different from the rest. The librarian of Tattletoo, Mr. Whist, called me to the archives below the school. He was a gentle, stooped man with kind eyes, always smelling faintly of ink and old leather. He handed me a book wrapped in red cloth, its cover blank. Wherever this book goes, he whispered, it will fill itself with the reader's greatest desire. But when the last page is turned, that desire will be all they have left. Everything else will fade. I felt cold holding it, like the weight of it wasn't just paper, but possibility. My instructions were clear. Deliver it to a great city in the north, leave it on the steps of the Grand Library, and walk away. I did as I was told. For weeks after, stories reached Tattletoo. Librarians obsessed, visitors lost in the stacks, families wandering the streets, unable to remember why they had come. Eventually, the city closed its doors to strangers, the library locked and sealed. But I dreamed of the book, and sometimes, in the quietest hours, I imagined I heard its pages turning in my own home. Part 25. The Revelation. I began to understand the true shape of the curse that Tattletoo cast upon the world. Each item we exported did more than spread sorrow or longing or madness. Each took a little bit of Tattletoo with it, a fragment of the town, a thread from the golden fence, a shadow from our secrets. Slowly, we were leeching ourselves into the world outside. Perhaps I thought that was the point, a safety valve, a way for the town to survive its own darkness by bleeding it out, drop by drop, across distant lands. And each time I left, each time I returned, I felt less myself, like some invisible hand was chiseling away my soul, bit by bit. Part 26, Family Secrets. One evening, as rain battered the window panes and the wind howled like a lost thing, my mother sat me down by the fire. She looked older than I remembered, her eyes hollowed by years of loss and waiting. "I was once like you," she said, voice barely more than a whisper. "I too carried Tattletoe's burdens. I tried to run. I failed. We all do in the end." I took her hand, felt how thin and cold it was. "Why do we stay?" I asked. "For each other," she said. "For the hope that one day it will end, that we'll send out the last curse, and the world will forgive us, and the golden fence will fall." She looked at me, her gaze fierce and desperate. "But you must promise me, if you ever see a way out, for you, for your sister, for any of us, take it. Even if you have to leave me behind." Tears slipped down her cheeks. We sat in silence, listening to the rain and the distant muffled sound of laughter from the festival square. Part 27. The final delivery time moves strangely in Tattletoe. Days melt into weeks, weeks into years. Sometimes I catch my reflection in a window and barely recognize myself. Then, one spring morning, the committee summoned me with a new order, an export like no other. They handed me a simple box, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand, wrapped in linen and tied with red thread. "This is the last one," the chairman whispered. "After this, there will be no more. Take it to the edge of the world. Leave it there and do not look back. No explanation, no farewell." I set out before dawn, my mother and sister watching from the porch, their faces pale with fear and hope. The road was long and empty. The sky above the forest was the color of old bones. At last I reached the edge of everything, a place where the land fell away into mist, where the wind howled and the stars flickered low. I placed the box on a stone, stepped back, and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air shifted. The world seemed to sigh. The box trembled, then melted away like wax in a flame. I turned, heart pounding, and began the long walk home. Part 28. The Golden Fence Falls. As I approached Tattletoe, I saw smoke rising over the rooftops, but not the thick, choking smoke of the crematorium. This was gold and silver, drifting on the wind. The fence was collapsing. Its bars twisted and sagged, the gold melting into the ground, leaving only ashes and broken memories behind. People gathered in the streets, staring in silence. The committee stood together, faces grave. No one spoke. One by one, the townspeople stepped forward, touching the fence, letting it crumble beneath their fingers. I found my mother and sister among the crowd. We embraced, trembling with something like hope. The sky above Tattletoe was clear for the first time in my memory. Part 29. What remains without the fence? The world grew quieter. The darkness we had kept at bay for so long did not come rushing in. Instead, a strange peace settled over the town. Some people packed their bags and left, venturing into the world beyond. Others stayed, rebuilding, planting gardens where the golden fence once stood. I stayed for a time, helping where I could, listening for the first notes of birdsong in the trees. But I knew, deep down, that Tattletoe would never truly be free. There are places where the grass grows in perfect rows, where the fruit is too sweet, where laughter sounds a little too hollow. There are stories whispered in distant cities, tales of cursed goods, of festivals that end in silence, of music that lingers long after the last note fades. And somewhere, perhaps, an exporter like me carries a new burden, a curse with a different name. Ending. I dream of the golden fence, sometimes its bars shining in the moonlight, its shadows long and cold. I dream of the goods I carried, the people I cursed, the lives I changed without ever meaning to. And in those dreams I hear my mother's voice, soft as a lullaby. No fence can last forever. All things must end, even the curses we carry. Sleep now, and let the night take you. So if you ever taste lemonade too sweet to be real, or hear a music box play a tune you can't forget, or see a pair of boots in a shop window that seem to beckon. Remember Tattletale, remember the fence, and those who bore its weight. And sleep if you can. The end. As the night deepens, so does the mystery. Story 6, The Scent of Cinnamon and Death. They say every place has a smell. In my hometown Tattletale, it's cinnamon for death and nutmeg for life. Sometimes when the wind shifts, you can tell what the day will bring before you open your eyes, whether the air is sweet with hope or dusted with sorrow. I grew up among those scents, but these days the cinnamon chokes me. I work in Mrs. Holly's bakery, where every corner is heavy with spice, and the ovens never cool for long. They say death rates are climbing. They say the festival will bring hope. But I've learned, in Tattletale, hope is just another kind of hunger. And this week, Mr. V, the head of our town, the man who never ages and rarely visits, has arrived. He's asked for cinnamon rolls, and the whole town is trembling. Part 1, The Bakery and the Baker. I've spent my whole life surrounded by the warmth of Mrs. Holly's bakery, a place where butter sizzles and sugar drifts on the air. The people of Tattletale worship Mrs. Holly like a saint. Her bread has fed every family, her cakes have marked every birthday and wedding, and her pies have soothed every grief. But lately the ovens run hottest at midnight. We bake cinnamon buns, snickerdoodles, banana bread with more cinnamon than fruit. The demand is endless, the reasons unspoken. Piles of baked goods gather, stacked on counters and racks, waiting for exporters who never come. I asked Mrs. Holly once, what happens to all the cinnamon treats if they're never collected? She just stared at me, eyes gone dark as burnt sugar. Some questions, she whispered, are answered only when you're old enough to regret them. Sometimes we try to balance out the air, stirring vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry into the batter, if only to keep from drowning in spice. Only Mrs. Holly and I know about those secret bakes. She says you can't let the town smell hope. Not all at once. It'll drive them mad. Part 2. The news of Mr. This morning, Mrs. Holly bustled into the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour and something like worry. Deborah, get started on the frosting for the cinnamon rolls. Those are his favorite for some unspeakable reason. She never says his name outright, but everyone knows who he is. Mr. V, the man who rules Tattletale from the shadows, who funds our town and all the villages in its shadow, who hasn't changed in the 20 years Mrs. Holly has worked here. I hesitated. He, as in Mr. V, the Mrs. Holly just nodded, lips pressed tight. She rarely talks about Mr. V, but this time she looked almost afraid. Everyone in Tattletale has a story about Mr. V. Forced, the children chant his name in their skipping rhymes. The elders leave gifts at the foot of his statue in the market square, a man immortalized in bronze, standing taller than anyone living, his eyes carved deep and knowing. For days the town has been preparing for his arrival. The statue was polished until it gleamed. Painters worked day and night, splashing color across cracked walls. Shop owners filled their windows with wild displays. The florist built a jungle that climbed the awnings. The doll maker built a tiny carousel. The shoemaker constructed a miniature theater and posed his latest creations under spotlights. All of it just to impress a man who may never leave his office. Part 3. The Smell of Fear. The smell of cinnamon grew thick as fog. Every morning, I'd pass the crematorium on my way to work, watching the gray smoke rise and curl over the golden fence that circles our town. Cinnamon, they say, keeps away the scent of burning flesh. Or maybe it just covers it, sweetens it, turns it into something we can almost bear. People whisper about the death rate. Some say it's suicides. Others say it's those who ask too many questions. Others still say it's the ones who simply stopped working. Burnout's taken too literally here. Sometimes I catch Mrs. Holly staring into the fire, her eyes unfocused. She never speaks of her losses, but I know she's seen more death than she lets on. Part 4. The Invitation. The day before Mr. Vamua's arrival, Mrs. Holly grew quiet, her movements sharp and hurried. She called me over as I finished icing a batch of cinnamon rolls. "Deborah, you are being given a huge honor tomorrow. Make sure to dress nicely." My hands trembled. "Honor?" She nodded. Mr. V asked for our new baker to bring him samples of our goods." The words hung in the air, heavy as unbaked dough. I wanted to protest, to beg her not to make me go, but the look in her eyes silenced me. For the rest of the day, I moved through the bakery like a ghost, my mind whirling with fear and strange, desperate excitement. Part 5. Memories of Grandfather. I never knew my grandfather well, but Mrs. Holly did. He died before I was born, but his story lingered in every corner of Tattletoe, whispered in alleyways, carved into the wood of the benches in the square. He tried to help people, they say. He tried to change things, to ask why we bake what we bake, why the committee controls every job, every meal, every birth and death. He tried, and the committee decided he should die. Mrs. Holly told me once, as she kneaded bread by the window, that my grandfather loved chocolate. He hated cinnamon, said it was only fit for hiding the scent of the end. "Your grandfather had a mind of his own," she said, hands working the dough until it was smooth and elastic. "Not many people here do." Part 6. The Office of Mr. Feel. The next morning, I dressed in my cleanest clothes, brushed the flour from my hair, and gathered a basket of cinnamon buns, banana bread, and snickerdoodles. I walked through town, past the festival decorations, the banners flapping in the spring breeze. Workers were setting up tables and benches for the beer festival tomorrow, a tradition meant to lift spirits, to let the townspeople forget the cinnamon for a while. The office building stood taller than the rest of Tattletoe, its windows dark, its doors always closed. An assistant let me in and led me up a winding staircase. Inside the office, Mr. Vey waited. He looked just as everyone described, ageless, powerful, eyes a sharp, unnatural green. He stood as I entered, his smile wide but his gaze piercing. In the back of the room was someone else, a young man with messy dark hair, a bruise around one eye, and clothes torn and stained. He didn't belong here, but Mr. Vi spoke before I could ask. "Oh, don't pay attention to him. That's an old friend who decided to come along for the visit." Mr. V approached, arms open for the basket. "You must be Deborah Deller," he beamed, inhaling the scents. "Don't you love the smell of cinnamon? It's simply the best." I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. "I prefer chocolate," I admitted. He laughed, a sound too big for the small room. "So did your grandfather. Please, Deborah, have a seat." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to run. Part 7. Candid Conversations. Mr. Ver's smile didn't fade, but there was a new intensity in his gaze. "I know what you're thinking," he said, "and I know you're too afraid to ask. But just so you know, I appreciated your grandfather very much. I always liked that he had a mind of his own. There aren't many people like that, you know, the ones who aren't sheep." He sighed. "The committee decided for him to die. I swear those people are useless half the time, but someone's got to do the work, right?" He paused, sniffing the basket again. "I understand why Mrs. Holly made such a variety, but actually the cinnamon rolls are more than enough. When you get back to her, tell her to make enough for the entire festival tomorrow, will you? You might not believe it, but beer and cinnamon go wonderful together." His eyes bored into mine, searching for something. "The people here aren't allowed to have any of the baked goods," I said, voice barely a whisper. "Sure they can," Mr. V replied. "There's nothing wrong with the cinnamon, except that it smells like heaven, or hell. Depends on your definition." He winked. I sat in silence, trying to read his face, but it gave nothing away. Mr. Vi leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I know you're a smart girl, and I assume working with Mrs. Holly has given you a new perspective. So I'll be honest, I want to use the cinnamon rolls for an experiment. I frowned. So you can see if people will break the rules and burn even more of them? He shook his head, almost amused. It shows me their preferences. Cinnamon means death, and I want to see how many will happily indulge. There's nothing wrong with them, you know? Try one if you like. I shook my head. He smiled, as if I'd passed a test. Part 8. The offer. Mr. Vi glanced back at the battered young man, then at me. Now let's talk about the real reason I invited you here. I tensed every nerve on edge. He gestured to the young man. I have a job offer for you. Well, an internship for now. Start by taking care of my friend over there. Get him some fresh clothes, a haircut. Show him around. Bring him to the festival tomorrow. I stared. You want me to work as your assistant? He chuckled. In a sense. But more than that, Deborah, how would you feel about leaving the bakery behind and joining the committee? The room felt suddenly colder. I didn't answer. But we both knew, in Tattletale, you don't say no. Part 9. The Stranger's Tour. After the meeting, I left the office in a daze. Basket empty, mind full. The stranger, the battered young man Mr. V had called his friend, was waiting by the stairs. He barely looked up as I approached. I tried for politeness. My name's Deborah. I'm supposed to show you around. He shrugged. Name's Caleb, he mumbled. Up close, the bruises were worse than I'd thought. His shirt hung loose on a frame gone thin from hunger or neglect. We walked together through the square, past bunting and banners, and the smell of cinnamon growing stronger in the warming spring air. All around us, Tattletale was busy rehearsing its mask of celebration. Children darted between booths, faces streaked with flour and paint. Musicians tuned fiddles on makeshift stages. But even as laughter echoed, I saw how people's eyes slid away from the committee's windows, from the golden fence, from the smoke of the crematorium, how every smile ended before it reached the eyes. Caleb watched it all in silence, jaw set, like he was bracing himself for something, or maybe remembering something worse. When we passed Mrs. Holly's bakery, I brought him inside. The kitchen was warm and full of the scent of chocolate. Mrs. Holly glanced at Caleb's battered face and said nothing, but handed him a sweet roll, hot from the oven and dusted with sugar. He devoured it in 2 bites. For a moment, something like gratitude flickered in his eyes. Mrs. Holly spoke quietly as she worked. You're here for the festival, then? Caleb nodded, crumbs on his lips. Just remember, Miss Holly said softly, sometimes the festival is a celebration, and sometimes it's a warning. She glanced at me, and I saw fear there, not for herself, but for me. Part 10. Preparations and Paranoia. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. I took Caleb to the clothing shop, the barber, the square. Every corner of Tattletale was decked in color, but everywhere the scent of cinnamon pressed closer, like the whole town was caught in a single shared breath that no one dared release. That night, as I lay in bed, I could not sleep. I thought of the bakery ovens glowing in the dark, of Mrs. Holly's hands dusted with flour and fear, of Mr. V's smile, too wide, too knowing, of Caleb's bruises and the way he kept flinching at sudden noises, like he expected someone to grab him. Most of all, I thought of my grandfather, of the chocolate he loved, the questions he asked, and the price he paid. Outside, the wind rattled the eaves. The smell of cinnamon crept through my window. I wondered if this was what the end smelled like. Part 11. The festival begins. Dawn broke golden and bright. By the time I reached the square, the whole town had gathered, laughter ringing false under banners and colored streamers. Mrs. Holly had outdone herself. The bakery table overflowed with fresh cinnamon buns, stacked high like offerings to the gods of spice and smoke. The smell was overwhelming, so thick it made my eyes water. Caleb lingered by my side, new clothes barely fitting his thin frame. I noticed people staring at him, at us, but no one said a word. The beer flowed early. The musicians played old folk songs. The dollmaker's carousel spun, dolls frozen in endless, painted grins. And at the center of it all, the statue of Mr. Va gleamed in the sunlight, its shadow long across the cobblestones. I caught a glimpse of the committee members, watching from the edges of the square, measuring, calculating, never joining in the fun. And then, as the bells struck noon, Mr. V himself arrived. He didn't look like a king, but the crowd parted for him as if he was royalty. He smiled at everyone, waved, sampled the beer, shook hands with the mayor. But when he reached the bakery table, he paused, closing his eyes and breathing in the scent. "Perfect," he murmured. "Nothing in this world smells as fine as cinnamon in spring." He picked up a cinnamon roll, holding it up like a priest with a wafer. "For those we've lost," he said, "and for the future of Tattletoe." He took a bite. The crowd held its breath. Then he smiled, a wide wolfish grin. The festival erupted in cheers. But beneath it all I heard the whisper of the wind and wondered what we were truly celebrating. Part 12. The Stranger's Story. Caleb pulled me aside as the festival grew rowdier, leading me behind a row of stalls. His hands shook. "I need to get out," he said in a low voice. His eyes darted everywhere, never settling. "Mr. Settling. The Fed. He's not what he seems. None of this is." I tried to calm him, but he grabbed my wrist, urgent. "I came here because I thought maybe this town was different, that maybe the rules were kinder. But it's all the same. He brings people in, uses them, throws them out. You can't trust him. You can't trust the committee." He stared at me, desperate. "Why do you stay?" For a moment I couldn't answer. Family, I thought. Fear. The way the golden fence turns you around in the forest until you're lost and cold. Hope. Maybe the hope that something could change. Caleb's shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than ever. "Don't let him take everything from you," he whispered, "even if it means running." Part 13. The Candlelit Night. That night, as the festival faded and the music wound down, I walked home with Mrs. Holly. The stars shone cold above us, and the cinnamon smoke was thicker than ever. "Do you know what the committee really does, Deborah?" she asked suddenly. I shook my head. She took my hand, squeezing it tight. "When I was your age, they offered me a place too. Said I could have anything I wanted. Comfort, safety, secrets, but there's always a cost. In Tattletoe, nothing sweet stays sweet for long." She stopped beneath a street lamp, looking up at the golden fence. "Mr. Fee, he comes every few years, always hungry for something. Sometimes it's cinnamon rolls. Sometimes it's a name. Sometimes it's just the fear in our eyes." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They say the cinnamon keeps the dead away, but I think maybe it just keeps us from noticing how many of the living are already gone." She turned and walked away, her shadow long and thin behind her. Part 14. The Committee's Choice. The next morning, a letter arrived on thick cream-colored paper, sealed with red wax. My hands trembled as I broke it open. "You are hereby summoned to attend the committee at midnight. Do not be late." I spent the day in a haze of dread, mind running wild. Mrs. Holly said nothing, but her eyes followed me everywhere, worried. When midnight came, I made my way to the committee's chamber, a cold, windowless room beneath the town hall, lit only by flickering candlelight. Mr. V sat at the head of a long, polished table. The committee ranged on either side. Caleb was there, slouched in a chair, eyes hollow. "Mr. Pursam ho found, the watcher cos pras wave, it a danger for wave." Ver's smile was the same as before, wide, charming, dangerous. "Deborah," he said, voice smooth as syrup, We'd like to offer you a chance, a place at the table, a seat among those who decide what Tattletoo becomes. You've proven yourself worthy. Will you accept? I looked at Caleb, at the committee, at the golden sigil burned into the far wall. My heart pounded. I knew what this meant, what it would cost. Mr. Very's eyes bored into me. The cinnamon scent was overpowering. Slowly I nodded. Part 15, the first night on the committee. My initiation was simple and chilling. They placed a cinnamon roll before me, its swirl perfect, its scent so strong I nearly gagged. Mr. Bould, but the Sumpole des Telescopes, or and 5. Phi leaned forward. To serve Tattletoo, you must eat of its bread. You must taste the sweet and the bitter. You must remember every death and honor every loss. I picked up the roll, hands trembling, and took a bite. The flavor was exquisite, sugar and spice, and something deeper, something dark. 100 memories crowded my mind, faces I knew, faces I didn't, all lost to the crematorium, and the ovens and the years. The cinnamon burned on my tongue, sharp as grief, soft as longing. When I finished, Mr. V smiled and pressed a silver key into my palm. Welcome, Deborah. You are one of us now. Part 16, the true meaning of cinnamon. The days after my initiation bled into each other, all dusted with the same suffocating scent. As a new committee member, I was summoned daily to the old chamber beneath the town hall. Each time, I saw more of what Tattletoo was built upon. At the center of the room, a great bronze bowl always smoldered with cinnamon bark, heaped high and burning slow. The smoke curled through vents into every corner of the building, up through the bakery, the library, the florist's shop, the school. It keeps the air pure, one of the old counselors whispered to me. It keeps us safe. But I began to notice things the others didn't. Sometimes, in the wafting smoke, I saw shadows, faces flickering, eyes and mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Once I heard a voice, almost my grandfather's, whispering from the smoke. Death wears a sweet mask in Tattletoo. Be careful what you taste. Part 17, a conversation with Caleb. Caleb remained in town, a guest and a prisoner. He found me late one night, in the bakery kitchen, the ovens finally cool, Mrs. Holly asleep upstairs. I saw what you did, he said, voice hollow. You ate their bread. You're part of them now. I bristled but couldn't meet his eyes. You don't understand, I said. Sometimes you have to join the darkness to survive it. Caleb leaned closer, desperation in his bruised face. They're planning something, he whispered. Mr. V, he isn't here for the festival, not really. He's here for the choosing. I frowned. The choosing? He nodded. Once every few years, the head of the town selects a new bearer, a vessel for what Tattletoo can't contain. It's always someone new, someone promising, someone they can mold. He looked at me, fear and pity mixed together. This year it's you, Deborah. Part 18, the secret of the bakery. After Caleb left, I searched the bakery, restless, searching for comfort or for answers. In a locked drawer in Mrs. Holly's old desk, I found a bundle of faded letters, my grandfather's handwriting, looping and precise. They say cinnamon is for the dead, but what if it's a prison? What if every bun, every cake is a lock, and every scent we breathe a key? There were recipes too, scrawled in margins. But instead of flour or eggs, he listed names, dozens, maybe hundreds, over the years. I thought of the snickerdoodles, the cinnamon buns, the banana bread, all stacking higher and higher, never collected. I thought of the exporters, the crematorium, the endless cycle. My hands shook. Was Tattletoo's sweetness built on the bones of its own? Part 19, the night before the end. The festival's last night fell heavy with thunder and gold light. To Mr. Fame, me do fast, Mr. Faint have tiffin teen. In Wartree, Mr. Faint have tiffin teen. Gate talk in Wadatifantine. V's statue loomed over the square, its shadow stretching to the bakery's door. Mrs. Holly took me aside, her hands cold. Deborah, there are things I never wanted you to know, but I'm afraid it's too late. She opened the back door, leading me to the alley where the crematorium smoke met the bakery's own. I tried to fight them once, your grandfather too. We tried to stop the cycle, tried to make chocolate the taste of comfort again, not cinnamon the taste of death. She pressed a small, wrapped bundle into my hand. Keep this close, she whispered. If things turn sour, you'll know when to use it. Inside was a bar of chocolate, wrapped in waxed paper, inscribed with my grandfather's name. Part 20. The festival's climax. Midnight brought the festival's climax. The townsfolk gathered in the square, faces lit by lanterns, voices thick with drink and forced laughter. Cinnamon smoke filled the air, almost too heavy to breathe. Mr. Peen, Vi stood atop the committee platform, flanked by his council. He raised his hands. My friends, today we celebrate all that makes Tattletoe strong, but strength must be renewed. Sweetness must have its cost. He called my name. Deborah, step forward. The crowd parted, silent as the grave. I climbed the platform, heart pounding. Caleb watched from the edge, fists clenched. Mr. Vuff pressed a cinnamon bun into my hands. Eat, Deborah. Show the town what it means to accept our fate. I looked down, and for the first time truly saw it, the spiral of cinnamon, the dusting of sugar, the flecks of red in the swirl. Blood, I thought, or something worse. Part 21, Rebellion and Revelation. I remembered the chocolate misses. Holly had given me, palms sweating. I unwrapped it, breaking off a piece and pressing it into my mouth instead. A gasp rose from the crowd. Mr. Penn, the V's eyes went hard and cold. That's not what we do here, Deborah. But I felt something shift inside me, a warmth, a memory, a voice not my own. It's time for a new flavor, time for a new memory, time to end this. Suddenly, the wind changed. The cinnamon smoke blew back, swirling around the committee. People began to cough, eyes streaming. The dolls in the carousel started spinning faster, their painted faces twisted in terror. The golden fence outside the square shuddered. In the confusion, Caleb grabbed my arm. Run, he hissed. Now. Part 22. Flight and Choice. We ran through the square as chaos erupted. The cinnamon smoke was everywhere, thicker and blacker than ever. People were screaming, the taste of spice burning on their tongues. Behind us, I heard Mr. Bay shouting, his voice warped and furious. Bring them back. She's ruined the ritual. Bring them. We reached the edge of the square, the bakery looming ahead. Mrs. Holly waited at the door, holding it open. In here, she called. Inside, the air was cool and clear. I saw the chocolate bar, still half wrapped, lying on the counter. Mrs. Holly shut the door, leaning against it, breathless. There's no time. The fence, when the smoke is thick enough, the fence can break. If you want to leave, Deborah, you have to do it now. I looked at Caleb, at Mrs. Holly at the bakery I'd called home. Will you come with me? I asked. Mrs. Holly shook her head, tears in her eyes. I'm too old, and my place is here. But you run. Take the taste of chocolate with you. Bring sweetness somewhere new. Part 23. The escape. Caleb and I dashed through the darkened bakery, past the ovens and racks and secret drawers. I grabbed the remaining piece of chocolate and tucked it into my pocket, the wrapper rough against my palm. The chaos outside had grown. The golden fence trembled, the air thick with a storm of cinnamon and ash. Shadows twisted in the smoke, echoing the faces I'd seen in the council chamber's bowl. Caleb pulled me toward the back door. This way, he hissed. We slipped out into the alley, the world muffled by spice and screams. Somewhere bells were ringing, warning morning. It was impossible to tell. As we sprinted toward the edge of town, shapes darted in and out of the darkness, townsfolk running blindly, committee members shouting commands, and in the square, the statue of Mr. V seemed to weep tears of bronze. Part 24. Through the fence. We reached the fence just as the wind surged, cinnamon smoke billowing so thick I could barely breathe. My lungs burned. My eyes streamed tears. Caleb hesitated. It won't let us through. No one ever gets out. But I remembered what Mrs. Holly had said, when the smoke is thick enough, the fence can break. Desperate, I pressed the chocolate into Caleb's hand, then pushed him toward the trembling gold. Go, I shouted. He reached out, his fingers passed through the metal as if it were water. I followed, squeezing my eyes shut, holding my breath. For a moment it felt like falling through syrup, the scent of nutmeg, cinnamon, chocolate whirling all around. Then we were through, sprawled in the mossy wild woods outside Tattletoe. Part 25. Into the night behind us. The town was lost in a storm of sound and scent. We crawled away from the fence, collapsing under an ancient twisted pine. The air here was sharp with earth and fallen leaves. For the first time in my life, there was no cinnamon, just the honest rot and renewal of the outside world. Caleb looked at me, his face slack with disbelief. You did it, he whispered. You broke the ritual. But I wasn't sure. I looked back through the trees. I could see the glow of festival lanterns, the flicker of fire, the swirl of smoke. Was Tattletoe saved or ruined? Was it freed or merely broken open for something worse to creep out? Part 26. A sleep without spice. We wandered that night, lost in the wild. I clutched the chocolate, breaking off pieces to keep us moving, to remind myself of sweetness that didn't taste like death. Eventually we found a road, and a trucker who didn't ask questions gave us a ride as far as the next town. We washed our faces, ate real bread, and slept, truly slept for the first time in what felt like years. My dreams were full of strange images, golden fences melting in the rain, cinnamon spirals dissolving into chocolate rivers, Mrs. Holly smiling from a distant window, my grandfather's voice, soft and warm. Every place has a smell, Deborah. Yours is still your own. Part 27. The price of memory. Morning brought new fears. Would the committee hunt us down? Would Tattletoe survive its own unraveling? But Caleb only shrugged. Maybe it'll fall. Maybe it'll heal. Maybe it'll find a new mask. We stayed together. 2 ghosts escaped from a gingerbread grave. I found work in a bakery, far from any golden fence. I never told them where I came from, never told them why I refused to bake with cinnamon, why I kept nutmeg and chocolate close, why I smiled whenever I caught the scent of something new. Caleb moved on, restless, always seeking another home. He sent me postcards once in a while, always unsigned, always stained with chocolate. Part 28. The aftertaste. Sometimes at night, I dream of Tattletoe. I dream of Mrs. Holly kneading bread in the moonlight, of the committee pacing their candlelit chamber, of Mr. V ageless, smiling, staring out over a town that's lost its taste for death. I wonder if the cinnamon smoke has cleared, if the bakery ovens have cooled, if the golden fence has vanished, or only waits for new victims. And sometimes, in the quietest hour before dawn, I taste a sweetness on my tongue, a flavor older than fear, deeper than sorrow. It's chocolate. It's memory. It's the proof that some things, some names, some hopes, some flavors can survive even the darkest spiral of loss. Ending bedtime dread, and so I sleep, each night, far from Tattletoe. The wind outside my window is clean and sharp, and carries only the promise of rain. But sometimes I wake in the darkness, heart pounding, and catch the faintest trace of cinnamon on the breeze. Then I remember what Mrs. Holly said, hope is just another kind of hunger. Feed it something sweet, and it will grow. I close my eyes and let sleep take me, grateful for every dream that tastes like chocolate and every morning that smells nothing at all like death. This next story comes from a shadowed place. Story 7. When the town smells like beer. When the scent of beer floats through Tattletoe, we all know something is about to change. It's a strange thing how the memory of fear can settle in the nose. Most days, Tattletoe smells of nutmeg and cinnamon. Nutmeg for the living, cinnamon for the dead. But once a year, on the day of the beer festival, everything shifts. Hops and malt and sweet fermenting barley drift through the town, heavier than the humid summer air, threading through the market square and beneath every closed door. The air tingles as if the whole place is bracing for a thunderstorm. It used to be my favorite day. Now every breath tastes of dread. Part 1. Beer and Pretenses. The morning of the festival, I wake to laughter echoing up from the street. The window glows gold. Garlands stretch from rooftop to rooftop. By the time I dress and limp down the stairs, my arms still sore and useless from the accident that earned me my committee position. The whole town has been transformed. Long tables crisscross the market, piled with pretzels, potatoes, sausages glistening with grease. Beer carts stand at the 7 points of the square, their brass taps already frothing. The shops are shuttered for the day, but their displays shine behind glass, dolls grinning, shoes gleaming, candles flickering in windows painted with scenes of harvest and joy. Children run in circles around the Ferris wheel, shrieking with delight. The doll maker's carousel, borrowed for the day, whirls at the edge of the square. Over all of it, the statue of Mr. Vi watches polished and cold, eyes fixed on the committee table at the center. Everything is bright, festive, ordinary. But everyone in Tattletoe knows the truth. This is the day the head of our town chooses who will vanish next. Part 2. The Outsider. My duty for the festival is clear. Before I can join the committee at their table, I must tend to the outsider, Josh the battered, ragged man, who arrived with Mr. V. Vorsham Vi were none. The Sheevan B were no. It's strange how people stare at us as we cross the square. Most look away the moment I catch their gaze. A few children linger, wide-eyed, until their parents call them back with sharp whispers. No one ever asks who Josh is. In Tattletoe, we've learned that questions are dangerous. We make a strange pair, me in my best festival dress, sling on my arm, him in borrowed clothes from the market, his face a map of bruises and half-healed cuts. He watches everything with wary fascination. When I finally speak, his reply is blunt, almost amused. You're not even going to ask about my face. I shrug. You didn't ask about my arm. He grins, teeth sharp. Fair. Guess we're both here for reasons we didn't choose. We stand a while in the shadows between the beer carts and the food booths, out of the reach of curious ears. I lower my voice. Did Mr. Va do that to you? I whisper. He laughs, bitter but genuine. Not directly. But he didn't stop it either. You people, nobody here asks questions. You just obey. How do you stand it? I hesitate, unsure if this is a trick or some loyalty test the committee arranged. But the ache in my arm reminds me I have no reason to lie. People who try to leave don't survive, I say quietly. The rest just like living here. Or at least they're afraid of anything else. He nods, as if he expected nothing less. Part 3. The Rules of the Game. Later, we walk the market together. I buy him a new shirt and take him to the barber, watching as his bruises are revealed in the harsh white light. He asks to visit the doll maker's shop, enchanted by the displays in the window, but I almost shout no. You can't buy anything here. Everything made in Tattletoe is cursed. The dolls bite. The shoes strangle. Even the lemons will hollow you out if you drink their juice. He raises his eyebrows, half joking, half terrified. So everything is dangerous, and no one here uses any of it? Why do you people keep making things that will kill others if you know they're cursed? I want to laugh or scream or cry, But instead I shrug. It's punishment. It's tradition. We obey because it's safer than the alternative. He presses, his curiosity undimmed. But why keep living like this? Why let the committee decide who stays and who dies? I look away, feeling the weight of every unsaid word. Because sometimes, I say, it's easier to follow the rules than to risk being the next one sent to the crematorium. He is quiet for a long time. Part 4. The festival begins by afternoon. The scent of cinnamon has crept back into the air. Wrong, unsettling, even though no deaths have been announced today. Mrs. Hawley, the town's best baker, has spent the night making cinnamon rolls by the hundreds. It's the first time in living memory that cinnamon has been used for the living. Mr. ordered it, calling it an experiment, and I see the fear in Mrs. Hawley's eyes as she hands me a warm, sticky roll for the committee table. They say the cinnamon rolls will kill us, I whisper to Josh as we walk to the stage, baskets balanced on my good hip. He only shakes his head. No, that'd be too easy. We climb the stage together, the crowd's eyes heavy on our backs. Mr. V stands in the center, flanked by the 2 empty seats for us, Deborah, the baker's apprentice, and Josh the outsider. Around us, the committee members are scattered among the townsfolk, notepads and pens in hand. Mr. V addresses the crowd, his voice smooth and heavy as the summer air. My friends, he calls, tonight, there are no rules. The cinnamon rolls are for you. Eat 10. It's Bates of Hyper 30, at 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 Bates of Hyper 30. Drink. Enjoy. Tonight, there are no consequences. At first, no one moves. Then a brave soul bites into a roll, and the spell is broken. Soon people are laughing, feasting, stuffing themselves with sweet, sticky bread. I watch my parents' faces shining, eyes bright, devour their share. My heart lurches. I want to rush down to snatch the food from their hands, but Mr. First hand clamps my shoulder before I can move. You're lucky, he whispers. Your parents chose to eat. The ones who refuse, the ones who resist, are the ones we have to watch. I glance at Josh, and he nods grimly. He's choosing his next victims, Josh mutters, the ones who won't follow orders. Those are the ones the committee is writing down. Part 5. The True Purpose. I slump back into my seat as the realization sets in. Our festival isn't about joy. It isn't even about beer. It's about obedience. The people of Tattletoe have been conditioned to fear cinnamon as the scent of death. Tonight, Mr. V has twisted that fear into a test, a way to see who will follow and who will resist. I taste bile in the back of my throat, even as the scent of cinnamon and beer mingles in the air. All around me, the town rejoices, not realizing how close they have come to becoming the next victims. As the sun sets behind the golden fence, as the laughter fades into the hush of night, I realize there's only one rule in Tattletoe that matters. Do not stand out. Do not refuse. Do not ever, ever say no. Part 6. Shadows After Sunset. As dusk settles over Tattletoe, the square glows with lantern light. The laughter is quieter now, slurred, sated, restless. The air is thick with beer and cinnamon, a heady, dizzying mix that clings to the skin. People linger at the long tables, bellies full, cheeks flushed, voices weaving together in a rising hum. Children ride the carousel, their shrieks echoing into the twilight. The doll maker's Ferris wheel spins slow and creaky, shadowed figures outlined against the fading sky. Music drifts from the corners of the square, brittle and sharp, like an old music box wound too tight. At the edge of the marketplace, I see Mr. Via moving among the people, smiling, shaking hands, watching, always watching. Beside me, Josh is silent. His gaze lingers on the baskets of cinnamon rolls, now nearly empty. I whisper, "Do you feel it too?" He nods, jaw set. Something's about to happen. Part 7, The List. Night deepens. The lanterns flicker. As families gather up their children and start to drift home, the committee moves through the square with quiet efficiency. They stop at each table, murmuring names, marking lists. I see them glancing at those who refuse the cinnamon, the hesitant, the careful, the ones who lingered too long with uneaten rolls on their plates. My parents, thankfully, are not among them. I watch as my mother, tipsy and giggling, leans into my father's shoulder, arms wrapped around each other. For one breathless moment, I feel hope. Maybe this year no one will be chosen. But then I see Mrs. Linda, who never touched her food, clutching her husband's hand. I see the baker's helper, young, pale, eyes wide with fear. I see the old gardener, who always grumbled about the smell of cinnamon, now sitting alone, staring into the darkness. Josh whispers, "They've been marked." I want to scream, to grab my parents and run, but my body won't move. We sit together on the stage as the last of the rolls disappear and the festival quiets to a hush. Mr. Mide, for sneak, Vi climbs back up, smiling, glass raised. "My friends," he says, "thank you for your trust tonight. Tattlettoe is stronger than ever. Enjoy the sweetness. Enjoy the freedom." The crowd cheers, but there's a nervous edge, like everyone knows the real reason for this feast. Part 8, The Night Watch. As the festival ends, the townsfolk shuffle home, leaving behind empty tables, crumpled napkins, and the cloying scent of cinnamon still swirling on the breeze. The lights go out, one by one, until only the committee's lanterns remain. Josh and I are led away from the square, not to our homes but to the committee hall. The room is cold, lined with portraits of past leaders, their painted eyes grim and judging. The committee gathers around a long table, Mr. Vobor at the head. He addresses us with a calm that chills my bones. "You did well tonight, Deborah." "You too, Josh. The town will sleep soundly, and the festival will be remembered. But you must understand, the order must be kept. Those who hesitate, those who question, are a danger. Their names have been recorded." He doesn't say what will happen to them, but I know. Everyone in Tattlettoe knows. Part 9, The First Victims. The morning after the festival, the town is eerily quiet. The beer carts are gone, the food booths shuttered. The statue of Mr. V glints in the early light, his bronze face turned just so, as if listening. I wander the market, heart hammering in my chest. The air is sharp with the scent of cleaning vinegar, as if the cinnamon must be scrubbed away before the new day can begin. I hear whispers in the alleyways. Mrs. Linda never made it home last night. The baker's helper is gone, his bed unslept in. The old gardener's house is locked, curtains drawn, no answer at the door. I ask Mrs. Holly quietly, "Where did they go?" She doesn't look up from her dough. "Don't ask questions," she murmurs, voice thin. "It's safer that way." Josh finds me by the bakery. He looks older, eyes hollow. They took them, just like that. No warning, no goodbye. I want to run, to hide, to tear down the golden fence that keeps us penned in, but I can't. My family is here. My life, my history, my fear, all rooted in Tattletoo's black earth. Part 10, The Cost of Obedience. Days pass. The festival is forgotten. The cinnamon is gone from the air, replaced once again by nutmeg, bread, the dull sweetness of ordinary life. But nothing is the same. Every family who lost someone walks a little slower. Every laugh sounds brittle. Every shadow seems to hide watching eyes. The committee walks with a new confidence, pens tucked in their pockets, eyes sharp for any hint of rebellion. Mr. Vay's statue glows in the morning sun, a silent warning. Josh is restless. He wants to act, to stir people up, to break the cycle. They can't keep doing this, he says, fists clenched. One day someone will stand up. I want to believe him, but I've seen what happens to those who do. Still, at night, I lie awake and dream of a tattletale, where cinnamon means comfort, not death, where beer festivals end with songs and dancing, not disappearances. I dream, and I wait. Part 11. A Strange Visitor. A week after the festival, a new rumor ripples through Tattletale. A stranger at the edge of the forest, asking questions, sniffing the air as if searching for something. The committee is on high alert. Exports are paused. The bakery shutters early, and I help Mrs. Holly load a new shipment, this time only nutmeg and chocolate. At sunset, I see him, a man in a gray coat, face hidden by the brim of his hat, watching the town from beyond the golden fence. Josh sees him too. You think he's here to help us? He asks. I shake my head. No one ever comes here to help. The scent of cinnamon returns, faint but unmistakable, curling through the air like a warning. Part 12. The Whispering Woods. That night, I dream I'm standing outside the golden fence, the beer festival still in full swing behind me. The lights flicker, and the laughter has an edge too high, too desperate, as if everyone knows what's coming, but pretends not to. Beyond the fence, the forest calls, a hush of leaves, a churning mist. In the dream, I follow the path through the twisted pines, the earth soft beneath my feet. The further I walk, the clearer my thoughts become, as if the nutmeg and cinnamon are washing out of my body, replaced by the honest scent of mud and rain. Someone calls my name, soft, urgent, familiar. I wake with a start, heart pounding, the dawn cold and colorless. Outside, the town is still, and for a moment I wonder if I'm the last person left in Tattletale. Part 13. Secrets Under the Market. The stranger in gray is still watching the town. For days he stands just beyond the fence, unmoving, as if carved from stone. Children throw stones at him, but he never flinches. The committee pretends not to notice, but I see them meeting late at night, voices raised and faces drawn. One morning, I find Josh in the bakery, staring into a cup of coffee gone cold. I talk to him, he says quietly. I nearly drop the tray of rolls. What? He says he's looking for someone who escaped, someone who used to live here, a girl about your age. My breath freezes in my chest. Did you tell him anything? Josh shakes his head. Of course not, but he said something strange. He said Tattletale wasn't always like this, that the festivals used to be real, that the fence was built to keep something in, not out. We sit in silence, the scent of bread and fear thick around us. Part 14. The Taste of Rebellion. That afternoon, Miss Holly pulls me aside as we knead dough in the warm golden light. Deborah, you must be careful, she whispers. The committee is restless. They know people are afraid. Sometimes that's when they're at their most dangerous. I nod, but my mind is racing. For the first time in my life, I wonder what it would be like to leave, to taste bread that doesn't carry the weight of death, to live somewhere where festivals are celebrations, not tests. Josh seems to sense my thoughts. Let's go tonight, he whispers after dinner, his eyes burning with hope and terror. Just to the fence, just to see. My heart thuds painfully, but I agree. Part 15. The Edge of Everything. The moon is high and cold when we slip from our houses and steal through the shadows, avoiding the patrols. The beer carts are gone, the festival banners sag in the damp wind, but the marketplace is haunted by the memory of laughter. At the edge of the fence, The stranger waits, coat buttoned tight. You came, he says, voice low and strange. I don't answer. He studies me, his gaze piercing. They will never let you go, he says softly. Not while you remember what happened here. Not while you could tell the world. Josh steps forward, fists clenched. What do you want? The stranger smiles, a crooked, tired thing. I want to help. But help costs more than you think. He turns and melts into the woods, leaving us with nothing but questions. Part 16. Festival Ghosts. Back in the square, the town feels changed. People speak in hushed voices. Doors are double locked. Even the children are quieter, their games less wild. Somehow the scent of cinnamon lingers, even though no one bakes with it now. Mrs. Holly says it's in the walls, in the stones, in the bones of Tattletoe itself. That evening I find Josh by the old fountain, staring into the water, watching the reflection of the moon. Did your parents ever talk about leaving? He asks quietly. I shake my head. Never. They said the outside was worse. He shrugs. Maybe it is. But sometimes you have to risk the unknown. A cold breeze stirs the water. For a moment I see faces in the ripples. People I used to know. People who vanished after past festivals. The names from the committee's list. Part 17. The choice late that night. As I curl up in bed, I hear footsteps in the alley. At first I think it's just a cat or the wind, but then there's a soft tap at my window. It's Josh, his eyes wild, hair tousled. They're coming for me, he whispers. I heard them talking. I have to leave now. My heart pounds. Take me with you. He hesitates, then nods. Meet me at the fence in an hour. I grab my coat, a loaf of bread, and a handful of chocolate pieces from Mrs. Holly's secret stash. As I step into the night, the scent of beer is gone, but cinnamon follows me. A warning or a promise I can't say. Part 18. The fence again. At the golden fence, Josh is waiting, breath visible in the cold air. The woods are silent, the town behind us eerily still. Are you ready? He asks. I nod. Hand in hand, we step toward the fence. For a moment, I think we'll pass through, just as the legends say you can if your heart is pure or your purpose desperate enough. But the fence is solid, humming with unseen power. I press my palm to the cold metal and feel it shiver, as if alive. Behind us, a light flares. Committee lanterns, moving fast. We have to hide, Josh whispers. We run into the trees, the fence at our backs, the town at our heels, cinnamon burning in our lungs. Part 19. The woods between worlds. The woods beyond Tattletoe are older than anything I've ever known. Josh and I stumble through darkness, guided only by the glow of the committee's lanterns behind us. Every step feels like trespass. The forest floor is slick with fallen needles, the trees packed so thick the sky is a rumor. No path, no moon, no comfort, only the dry, distant taste of cinnamon dust in the air. Somewhere behind us, voices bark our names. Somewhere ahead, a thread of hope. We press on. Josh's breath rasps in his chest. My arm throbs with every jolt, but I don't dare slow down. Deborah, he whispers, if we get separated, keep running. I nod. I'm not sure what we're running toward, only what we're running from. Part 20. The edge of the spell at the heart of the woods. Something strange happens. The night grows warm. The air thickens, heavy with the scent of nutmeg and bitter bark. We come to a clearing, and for a moment it's almost peaceful. Insects corr, catapult third in egg, the toinpolval poremps. Mist glows in the hollows. But something's wrong here too. The earth is too soft, spongy, almost as if it's been recently dug. Josh kneels, brushing aside pine needles. Graves, he murmurs. Old ones. Maybe older than Tattletoe itself. I kneel beside him, fingers trembling. Each stone bears no name, just a spiral carved deep, a mark I've seen on the town's crest, on the doors of the committee hall, on the iron gate to the crematorium. We rise, and the forest closes in, the clearing gone, as if it never existed. Part 21. The fence follows, we circle back, trying to orient ourselves. My mind reels. What if the woods are bigger on the inside? What if you can never really leave? The cinnamon scent grows sharper. We hear the crackle of radios, the cold snap of committee boots on fallen branches. I want to cry out, but Josh grabs my hand, squeezing so hard my knuckles ache. He whispers, "Don't let them see you. Whatever you do, don't answer if they call your name." We crouch behind a deadfall as lanterns pass. Voices drift through the trees. She was seen with the outsider. She knows too much. Mr. V won't be pleased if they get away. They always come back. They always come back. I close my eyes and wish for sleep, for dreams, for the soft taste of chocolate and the safety of Mrs. Holly's kitchen. Part 22. The final reckoning. At dawn, the lanterns fade, and the woods are silent again. We stagger on until we reach a wall of brambles, impenetrable, humming with the same power as the golden fence. I press my hand against the thorns, cold, sharp, alive. Josh slumps to the ground, exhausted. "We can't get out," he says, voice flat. I want to scream. Instead, I sit beside him and stare into the thicket. The cinnamon scent is strongest here, mingled with something sour and sweet. Beer, bread, the memory of festivals long past. After a long silence, I whisper, "What if there's nowhere else? What if the whole world is like this?" Josh doesn't answer. He just looks up, hollow-eyed. "We have to go back," he says, voice barely a breath. Part 23. Return to the fence. When we find our way back to the fence, it's morning. Tattletoe lies beyond, golden and cold. Smoke rises from the crematorium. The streets are empty, no festival laughter now, only the distant tolling of a bell. Mr. V stands by the open gate, arms folded, flanked by the committee. He smiles as we approach, eyes bright with triumph, and something close to sorrow. "You ran," he says quietly. Josh squares his shoulders. "We tried." Mr. V nods. Everyone tries, eventually. That's part of the contract. But there is no leaving Tattletoe, Deborah. Not for you. Not for anyone. My throat tightens. Why? Why keep us here? Why the tests? The cinnamon, the festivals. Why make us hurt each other? He sighs, as if genuinely weary. Because Tattletoe is a sanctuary and a prison. Because the world outside is darker than you know. Because some curses cannot be escaped. They can only be managed. He gestures for us to enter. I hesitate, but Josh takes my hand, and together we cross the threshold. Part 24. The price of peace. Life returns to its strange, uneasy rhythm. The committee keeps their lists. The festivals come and go. Every year, the beer flows. The cinnamon rolls are served, and every year, more names are marked. Josh is quieter now. He works at the edge of town, tending the fence, his face shadowed by secrets he'll never share. I bake with Mrs. Holly, my hands forever dusted with flour and fear. Sometimes I see the stranger in gray at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting. Sometimes I wonder if I could be the one to finally break the spell, if anyone could. But every time I find the courage to try, I smell the cinnamon, and I remember what it means. Ending, bead time dread, Tattletoe sleeps, and so do I, when I can. I lie awake in the dark, listening to the creak of the house, the hush of the woods, the distant laughter that sounds a little too close. I wonder if tonight will be the night the committee knocks on my door. I wonder if my parents will wake to find me gone, another empty bed, another name erased. But mostly I wonder about the festival, about the scent of beer and cinnamon, and the way the whole town comes together to celebrate a curse. I think about the price of safety, the cost of obedience, the weight of secrets too old to ever be washed away. And as I drift toward sleep, I hear Mr. V's voice, soft as the settling dust. You belong here with your friends and family. This is the better alternative. Trust us, but I don't trust him. Not anymore. Let the night settle, let the cinnamon scent linger, and let Tattletoe dream its uneasy dreams. Because when the town smells like beer, we know new victims will follow, and the curse will go on.